Walailak University is located in Thasala, Nakhon Thambara, a major city of southern Thailand. The province has many natural wonders and beautiful beaches all along the coast, and is in the same region as the popular beaches of Koh Samui and Phuket. The campus is surrounded by the beautiful and large greenery of Khao Luang National Park. Walailak University presents a fine example of the feng shui concept of water, land and mountains combination. With the direction set by Professor Dr. Sombat Thำรงธ ญวงศ our president since July 2016, the university has stepped into an era of change, focusing on high quality, both in teaching, learning and research. Over 90% of the students who graduate from Walailak University pass professional examinations in their first attempt, one of the best records in the country. Walailak University was assessed by the Office of the Higher Education Commission of Thailand in 2019 and awarded a score of 4.8 out of 5, which is among the highest in the country. Crucial items of the ranking included quality of graduates, research and publication, social engagement, promotion of art and culture, and management. In addition, academic ranks have nearly doubled in the last 4 years. The rate of employment among graduates is 98%, something that we at Walailak University are very proud of. To achieve high quality and internationally recognized learning outcomes, Walailak University incorporates the UK Professional Standards Framework or UKPSF in all her teaching. High-level student learning is of great importance. About 60% of our teaching staff have been awarded fellowships from the UK-based Advanced Higher Education. As part of Walailak University's internationalization efforts, and to prepare for our graduates for high-level and international job opportunities, English language proficiency is emphasized. There are more than 30 international educators dedicated to first-year English language teaching alone at the university. Walailak University is a comprehensive research university with 3 main academic areas: health sciences, science and technology, and social sciences, with 42 programs across 14 schools and 3 international colleges, plus a number of international courses. Smart facilities such as smart classrooms, smart laboratories, smart mobility, and smart security are in place so that the students can truly enjoy their university life and develop the various skills necessary for their future careers. Study at Walailak University is active, engaging, and fun. Walailak University cares deeply about her staff and student health. The university provides modern high-standard sports facilities, including swimming pools, a fitness center, and other sports amenities. Walailak University prides herself on being a leading comprehensive research university committed to academic excellence. The university operates 21 centers of research excellence that drive high-level research and education and academic careers and academic services that support Thailand's technology policy or Thailand 4.0. Her achievements are reflected in the Saimago Institution's rankings. Walailak University's innovation and research publications rankings have been among the highest both in Asia and in Thailand. In addition, Nature Index ranks Walailak University among the top in Thailand in physical sciences. Also, Walailak University regularly produces world-class publications in ISI Scopus Index journals. Internationally read and cited research publications have increased dramatically under Professor Dr. Sombat's leadership, and Walailak University is increasingly recognized for its active research environment. Social engagement projects that translate research findings and innovations into practice for the benefit of the community are another hallmark of Walailak University. Entrepreneurial spirit is much valued at Walailak University. Students can enjoy co-working spaces with the private sector right here at the university's Science and Technology Park. Walailak University plays a very significant role in addressing the country's healthcare needs, especially in southern Thailand. The University Medical Center, constructed on 65 hectares and with 750 beds, and the most advanced medical technology will be operational starting in 2021, serving up to 500,000 patients annually. With a pristine location surrounded by greenery, Walailak University is a natural location for a botanic garden. Initiated by the Schools of Pharmacy, Walailak University features one of the most beautiful herbal gardens in Thailand. Not only is this garden beneficial to the students of the School of Pharmacy and applied Thai traditional medicine, it is also a place where the public can visit and enjoy. Walailak University has one of the most treasured 216 hectares botanic garden, featuring a diverse tropical plants. It is also a popular camping ground for the university students and staff and the public. And this is where a Natural History Museum is being constructed. The museum is an initiative of Her Royal Highness Princess Mahachakri Sirithorn. With combined land and man-made lakes of 48 hectares, Walailak Park is a famous place for recreation, not only for students and staff but also for the public. Sitting at the park's deck, watching a sunset against Khao Luang Mountains in the evening is a pleasure enjoyed by many. The university is committed to providing education opportunities for all. The university seeks to excel in research and innovations. The university's mission to produce graduates that are both professionally competent and morally sound is uncompromising, consistent with the vision to be an institution of good governance, a source of knowledge for critical problems facing the nation, to unfailingly address community needs, and to strive for international recognition for excellence. A university where young people can embrace their dreams, a university that challenges itself to promote harmony and solve global problems. Change never stops. We are changing. We are a university of quality. This is a land of glory for all.
Okay, that was the beautiful presentation of our university, Walailak University, on its 30th anniversary. May I tell you again that currently Walailak University got QS Asia University ranking as the top 551 to 600 Asian universities. Also, our university has obtained its reporter status in Times Higher Education World University Ranking 2022, as well as in the THE Young University Rankings 2022. THE Young University Rankings are for those universities under 50 years old. In order to achieve a world ranking on Times Higher Education platform, a university has to provide evidence to Times Higher Education across 4 core missions. The first one, teaching. The second one, research. The third one, knowledge transfer and international outlook. For Times Higher Education World University Ranking 2022, Walailak University, as I have told you, has got its reporter status, but for 2023, Walailak University is working on very hard under the presidency of Professor Dr. Sombat ThำรงThanyavong to be eligible for a ranking. That means we need at least 150 research publications in academic journals indexed in Elsevier Scopus database each year for 5 consecutive years, and we need to have at least 1,000 research publications within a period of 5 years. Currently, to celebrate our 30th anniversary, we have achieved the required publications. All Walailak University staff members are now so thrilled, and we are so grateful to President Sombat ThำรงThanyavong determined supports to make it happen after his first 4-year presidency period. He is now appointed by the University Council as our president for his second presidency season. Walailak University is now looking forward to its challenging journey to a better world university ranking in the near future. I think now it might be time for the formal ceremony of the opening. Let's start with the formal ceremony now. May I address myself first to Associate Professor Dr. ภาสิทธิ์ หล่อ ธีรพงศ์ Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, President สมบัติ ธำรง ธัญวงศ์ Honored keynote and panelist speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Again, my name is Patnarin Supakorn, Acting Director for the Center of International Affairs at Walailak University. It is my honor to take the MC role today, and may I also introduce my co-moderator, Assistant Professor Dr. Walailak Research, who will assist coordinating during the question and answer session from the Zoom chat box. Hi, Dr. Walailak Research. Would you like to send your warm regards to WRC 2022 distinguished audience? Yes? Okay. So you get to know her a little bit. How are you doing? It has been a long while since we have been participating in different Zoom meetings during the new normal of COVID-19. On behalf of Walailak University, I would like to express the university's warmest welcome to today's participants of 2022 Walailak Research Convention on the theme of the role of post-COVID higher education and human development. 2022 Walailak Research Convention is organized by the Institute of Research and Innovation and 15 Centers of Excellence at Walailak University under Vice President Vanna Churit. This event is co-sponsored by our quality healthcare partner from Taiwan, Changhua Christian Hospital, our honorable MOU partner since 2019. Walailak University's great relationship with Changhua Christian Hospital started 3 years ago when our university's team was invited to visit Changhua Christian Hospital, and we continue to collaborate virtually through our co-hosted international virtual conferences every year from 2019 until now. And on the occasion of Walailak University's 30th anniversary, Changhua Christian Hospital is kindly supporting Walailak University through its donation of 100,000 baht for this 2022 Walailak Research Convention. We would like to take this moment to show our honorable partner our appreciation for your continuing support and strong collaboration. In appreciation, Walailak University has displayed Changhua Christian Hospital name and logo on all of our Zoom background. Ladies and gentlemen, to learn more about Changhua Christian Hospital, you may scan the QR code present on your Zoom background. And Walailak University would like to send our token of appreciation to Dr. Nina Gao, a CEO, Overseas Medical Mission Center of Changhua Christian Hospital letter. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of big applause to our kind partner, Changhua Christian Hospital. Next, may I proceed to WUC 2022 with some food for your thought about education from world figures from diverse disciplines. First, a politician like former President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." And then a world-renowned scientist like Albert Einstein said, "Education is not the learning facts, but the training of the mind to think." Then a great Irish playwright, George Bernard Shaw, proposed, "A life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent doing nothing." Briefly, in the eyes of renowned world figures, education is learners' tool for critical thinking through series of mistakes to turn this world into a better place. Those were great thinkers' proposal for quality education before COVID-19. Today, all people around this earth planet have been challenged for many years by the threat of COVID-19. How does it affect our education? How would you like to direct our education for quality population in the next normal era? Post-COVID, quality education questions are boggling our mind, and we need to pay a good attention to this issue among many others. The United Nations has, for example, proposed in 2015 a better sustainable world without poverty, without inequality, and with improved health, education, economic growth, ample ocean and forest resources, and effective solution to climate change problems. Throughout this 2022 Walailak Research Convention, lasting 2 days from March 28th to March 29th, I will leave with all of honorable participants of this conference your own definition of quality education in post-COVID-19 that will greatly efficiently contribute to human development. The morning ceremony will start with Walailak University President Sombat ThำรงThanyavong welcome remarks, followed by a video clip of the opening remarks by Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, Associate Professor Dr. Phasit Law Thirapong. May I proceed now to the very first session of the convention ceremony with Walailak President Professor Dr. Sombat ThำรงThanyavong welcome remark of 2022 Walailak Research Convention and before the video clip by the Permanent Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now presenting to you our President Sombat ThำรงThanyavong.
Associate Professor Dr. Phasit Law Thirapong, Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, honor keynotes and panelist speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am very privileged to be here today at the opening ceremony of Walailak Research Convention 2022 with the main theme on the role of higher education in the post-COVID and human development. Tomorrow, March 29, 2022, will mark Walailak University's 30th anniversary after its founding in 1992. Every year, the university celebrates its anniversary with international communities through Walailak Research Convention, whereby scholars from around the world can share and exchange exciting discoveries and innovation to move forward frontier research and global development for sustainable future of mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, for the opening ceremony, Walailak University received the greatest honor from our distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Pokman Peter Yuan, Dean of the College of Professional and Continuing Education, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, to deliver his speech on higher education during and after COVID. After that, our distinguished 2021 WU Research Award recipients and a productive chemist, Associate Professor Dr. David Harding. In fact, he is a full professor already, just waiting the appointment by the king, just that. Will deliver his talk on switchable molecular materials, a story of research action. For the plenary discussion on the topic of the role of higher education in the post-COVID and human development, we received an honor from three highly established scholars: Professor Dr. Yusuf Christie from New Zealand, Dr. Akravit Kanjana Opat from Thailand, and Professor Dr. Edmund John Dieng Ri from Singapore. At the end of this opening ceremony, three Walailak world-class researchers recognized by the Stanford University's 2021 World's Top 2% Scientists, namely Associate Professor Dr. Manat Chaichan, Associate Professor Dr. Manut Nisthaporn, and Associate Professor Dr. Natwit Wattanasakunpong, will share their research experience. Today afternoon and tomorrow, there will be several international webinars organized by 20 Walailak University Centers of Excellence, where a number of international scholars join and exchange their research experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, through my 5 years presidency, Walailak University's 30th anniversary has been blessed with a number of promising achievements in line with its vision. Walailak University aspires to be an institution of good governance, to be a source of knowledge for critical problems facing the nation, to unfailingly address community needs, and to strive for international recognition for excellence. First of all, Walailak University has turned itself to be a quality source of knowledge, both the international and national levels. This past academic year of 2021, Walailak University, as a result of its multi-dimensional transformation, was awarded its QS Asia University ranking 2022 as the top 551 to 600 Asian university, or the 19 among the Thai university. Walailak University also won an international rank of 601 to 800 awarded by Times Higher Education Impact Ranking 2021, evidencing our efforts to enhance quality education, research academic services, and cultural heritage preservation in response to critical problems facing both the national and international communities, and in line with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. As a quality national education institute, Walailak University was also awarded the score of 4.93 out of 5 for its 2020 academic performance by a Quality Assurance Committee appointed by the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research, and Innovation. The high institutional performance resulted from Walailak University's key transformation in the following 5 areas: organizational leadership, educational management, research, academic services, and preservation of arts and cultural heritage, and management and administration. As a result of our continuous development during my presidency, we can assure our beloved nation that among young universities in Thailand, Walailak University is now among the best in young university. To start with currently, we have the highest number of world-class lecturers. To be specific, 469 lecturers certified by the United Kingdom-based Advanced Higher Education. Walailak University is also currently proud of a higher number of quality undergraduates. Hundreds of newly renovated small-size smart classrooms and modernized student dormitories. Additionally, most notably, should you have a chance to tour around our campus, Walailak University has also been recognized internationally as the best green campus in southern Thailand by the UI Green Metric World University Ranking for second consecutive years from 2020. A significant element of quality education derives from frontier research. Currently, Walailak University has achieved up to 77% of quality Q1 and Q2 research publication in Scopus Index journals. Among the top 3 in Thailand, quality publication will bring about higher citation rate. Meanwhile, our international research collaboration level is currently 37%. The Nature Index, a high-quality research and collaboration ranking institute, has ranked Walailak University the 8th in its overall research performance among research-based universities in Thailand. The Scimago Institution ranking has placed Walailak University is 14 places for overall research performance in Thailand. Besides, our determination to be the land of educational glory, Walailak University is also concretizing its role as the best healthcare pillar for the upper south of Thailand. In November 2021, Walailak University celebrated the grand opening of its hospital with 120 inpatient care units and is currently working on increasing up to 419 units very soon before the progressing of to its full capacity of the total of 750 units. Ladies and gentlemen, Walailak University has been traveling a very long, challenging journey to come this far, and we will never stop to reinvent Walailak University to be recognized far and beyond as one of the stars among global and frontier research universities, with good governance, with cutting-edge body of knowledge for critical problems facing the nation and the world, and with innovation that unfailingly addresses national and international needs. Most importantly, Walailak University currently holding the reporter status in Times Higher Education World University Ranking will definitely add an international climb to Thailand education by achieving its world placement in the THE World University Ranking in the near future. Ladies and gentlemen, to this end, it is an auspicious time for me to call upon the Honorable Chairman of today's opening ceremony, Associate Professor Dr. Phasit Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, to give an opening remark for Walailak Research Convention 2022 in celebration of our 30th anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, President Sombat ThำรงThanyabong, for your report on the delightful achievements of our university during your presidency. And also, as he has already mentioned to the audience that we will never stop. And if you are looking for collaboration with partners, international partners, please contact the Center for International Affairs at Walailak University at cia.wu.ac.th. All are welcome to be our international partners. Next is the opening remark, well prepared by Honorable Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation. May I present to you Associate Professor Dr. Phasit Thirapong's video clip.
Distinguished guests, it is my pleasure and honor to be invited to officiate the Walailak Research Convention 2022 with its theme of this year, the role of higher education in the post-COVID and sustainable development. I would like to congratulate Walailak University and its organizing committees for making this event happen despite the pandemic challenges, which has changed the way we live and do things. Those of us in the higher education sector have had direct experience of having to adjust to the new normal. The effects of the pandemic are happening on top of other challenges that Thai higher education has been facing in the past decade or so. As outlined by President Professor Dr. Sombat ThำรงThanyabong, Walailak University initiated in 2016 an era of change that has encompassed key areas of activities such as adoption of internationally recognized teaching practice from the United Kingdom, promotion of high-level research and academic ranks, and skill-based student experience. The change that have taken place at Walailak University in the past 5 years are definitely consistent with the direction that Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation has set out in recent years, particularly our policy to streamline the whole higher education sector in Thailand. I am referring to, in particular, the exercise that has categorized universities into 5 groups, namely global and frontier research, technology, development, and innovation, area-based and community engagement, moral and intellectual cultivation, and development of professionals and specials. The aim of this grouping is largely to create a framework by which our universities can enhance their capacities to both serve the country more effectively and be recognized for their excellence internationally. Walailak University is a research-intensive university, so events like this research convention that bring together top researchers, academics from around the world, albeit virtually, to share their latest research findings and to plan future collaborations are worthwhile. Research work in whatever disciplines areas that academics do are in fact universal, for their ultimate goal is for human development and sustainability. I would like to sincerely congratulate and thank Walailak University for organizing this hybrid convention, which I am sure will lead to stronger collaborations among academics to work on new research topics that will benefit us all. Again, congratulations, and I wish all every success in their deliberations. On that note, it gives me a great pleasure to declare open Walailak Research Convention 2022. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a kind opening video clip for 2022 Research Convention of Walailak University delivered by Honorable Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, Associate Professor Dr. Phasit Law Thirapong. Up next will be a great keynote speech by a world scholar, Professor Dr. Peter Yuan from Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Let me introduce a little bit about Professor Dr. Peter Yuan. He finished his bachelor degree and master degree in business administration from State University of New York at Buffalo, and he did his PhD at University of Birmingham. He is now the Dean of College of Professional and Continuing Education and also a professor at the Department of Management and Marketing. And his major fields of expertise include healthcare economics and research methods. He is now the chairman of Federation of Self-Financing Tertiary Education, honored fellow at Australian College of Health Management, and also a fellow of Hong Kong College of Health Services Executives. He is also an editor of the journal Public Administration and Policy, an editorial committee member of Asia Pacific Journal of Health Management. Also, he is a member of the following government committees: Hong Kong Health Medical Development Advisory Committee, Hong Kong Committee on Self-Financing Post-Secondary Education, Local Expert Group of Technical Alignment of Hong Kong Qualifications Framework and European Qualification Frameworks, and also Hong Kong Steering Committee on Qualification Frameworks Fund. May I present to you, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dr. Peter Yuan with his presentation on higher education during and after COVID.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patnarin. I'd like to congratulate Walailak University for your achievements. And I'm very delighted to be able to speak at this conference, to see my old friend, President Professor Sombat, again here online. I had the pleasure to visit the campus a couple of years ago and was thoroughly impressed by the facilities, by the dedication of the staff. So it's my great honor to be invited to speak again at Walailak University. So maybe I start sharing my screen here, see if I can find it. Yes, the title of my talk is in line with the theme of the conference, which is role of higher education in post-COVID and human development. So I would limit my talk to the scope of higher education during and after COVID. What I'm going to talk about within this next 15-20 minutes would be to talk about the impact of the pandemic on tertiary education. And we all know that pandemic will one day be over. Although we have been thinking about this for the past 2 years, and it seems that it is never going to end. And but I think eventually it will be over. Then we still have to face a lot of other forces confronting higher education in addition to the aftermath of the pandemic. So my talk would be based on mostly the Hong Kong experience, which may or may not be applied to all other countries. But I guess some of the factors are common to universities throughout the world. The most obvious impact of the pandemic on education is, of course, online education. If we look at web technology, it has been around for a long time, and MOOCs were started about 10 years ago, by Harvard and MIT, establishing the edX, and later on Coursera by Stanford, and then FutureLearn in the UK by the UK Open University, the Xitang X, which is a platform by Tsinghua University in China. So those things have been around for over 10 years. But actually the impact on education has so far been rather marginal. It is something that it is still not mainstream. However, the whole world suddenly switched to online teaching almost overnight because of the pandemic. And suddenly we find everyone, not just universities, secondary school, primary schools, even kindergarten, started to teach online. Of course, there are many advantages in having online teaching. We call it the 4 A's. Any age can participate anywhere, anytime, using any device. And it also offers great opportunity for continuing education. So I guess the question is, how are students adapting to online learning during COVID? So I'm going to share with you some evidence from a recent survey of students around the world in which we participated in this exercise. This is actually, we participated in this ISB, International Student Barometer, run by iGraduate. They perform, I don't know whether colleagues are familiar with this, they perform this survey every year globally. And you can participate in this survey. And we have been participating for the consecutive 6 years. My school is labeled under actually the Hong Kong Polytechnic University is a public funded university. However, my college is a self-financing kind of with a private arm of the public university. So we conduct our survey separately. So my college consists of a community college and also a School of Professional Education and Executive Development. Just to show you the participants, so it is a pretty large number of universities who participated in the survey, including, I think, mostly Asia-Pacific universities and European universities. There are a few North American universities, but compared to the Asia-Pacific, I think the Asia-Pacific group is the dominant group. There are some top universities like Oxford University and etc. And then there are some smaller and younger universities. We always like to benchmark ourselves against the Asian institutions. So these are the Asian universities participating in the survey. So there are also two Thai universities, Mahidol University and Prince of Songkhla University also participated. Now, the general question is, how satisfied were you with your institution's response to COVID-19? And my college, I think the majority of them are actually satisfied or very satisfied with the response. So we were kind of pleasantly surprised that the students was quite happy with the way things were going during COVID. And if we look at the Asian average, so they're all comparable. So ours is maybe we have more satisfied, but the Asian benchmark is more very satisfied. Then if we divide it up into communications versus online teaching, we still find a similar picture. So the left-hand side of the graph shows the communication, general communication during COVID period. The right-hand side shows the online teaching satisfaction rate by students. We can see that in general, they are quite satisfied with the general communication as well as the online teaching. So if you look at online teaching for my universities, over 80%, 87% found online teaching satisfactory. So that is quite amazing. And if we look at the Asian benchmark, it is also comparable, also about 85. Then if we dwell into what aspects of online teaching are problematic or are good, then we find the blue represents those responses from my college, and the red represents the Asian average. In general, students are quite happy. Majority of them are quite happy with online lectures. Even tutorials, which is more interactive, most of them found that okay. Online resources, including e-resources from the library, are quite satisfactory. A little bit lower for the online assignment and group work. And most problematic, I think, for us is the online tests and examinations. So that is still not widely accepted. We actually encourage most of our colleagues to do take-homes rather than online proctored type assessment. And so, but it's still not bad. So 79% in the Asian average is much higher, 87%. So in general, I think we all did okay in terms of teaching using online during COVID. Now, this is really surprising. We asked the question, overall, do you prefer studying online or face-to-face? And initially, we thought all the students, after 2 years of online teaching, would all want to come back, right, for face-to-face. But we found that actually, for our college, more than half, the blue one, the inner ring represents responses from my college, 56% actually prefer online. So the majority of the students actually prefer to study online rather than to come back to the classroom. So that was surprising. So meaning they have accepted online teaching, they have embraced it, they prefer it actually. At least more than half of them prefer. So there are still one half who prefer to come back for face-to-face learning. And then we introduced hybrid teaching because in Hong Kong, the number of new cases were actually very low last year. It was so low, there are almost like for sustained period of zero local new cases. but there are still some imported new cases, and there are so overseas students who cannot come back. So our university introduced hybrid teaching in the September term, 2021. So meaning the students, if they have been vaccinated or tested negatively every week, can attend lectures in the classroom. Or if they don't want to, they can attend lectures online. So for those overseas students, or even those who are not vaccinated, they can still attend lectures online. So we gave them the choice. And what happened? Majority attended online. So apart from the first 2 weeks where we had almost like a full house in the classrooms, after that, we find most students would just attend it at home or on other places on campus, but they don't want to go into the classroom. So how do we interpret that? So we think that students like online teaching. So despite the fact that we hear a lot about the negative side of online teaching, so I think the implication is that there is a green light for continuing and further develop online courses. So it is not something that we have to do it just because of COVID. I think this is widely accepted by young people to study online. However, we also have concerns. They're getting too comfortable with learning from home. We work from home and they learn from home. They might just lie in bed, switch on their iPhone and then attend lectures. It is hard to get them back to the classroom now after they have tasted this freedom of not coming to class. Unless we made it compulsory, of course, if we required it, if we assessed them based on the physical presence. We feel that this lack of interaction between peers, between the students themselves and between the students and teachers is not good. It is not conducive to development of interpersonal skills, teamwork, social skills, etc. And I also viewing some of the lectures online because they're all uploaded to OneDrive. And then I do find that many of the lectures are not of high quality, really boring. The professors was just talking, in front of his laptop, for hours and hours, and then reading the PowerPoints. So I think there is still a great deal of room for improvement in terms of online lectures. So I think we need to blend online learning with new pedagogies under the new normal when things go back to normal. I think students will still prefer some elements of online, but we also need to inject a greater element of active learning into the whole learning processes. In my universities, we now require at least 1/3 of the class time should be taken up by active learning activities. So that is now the guideline for all courses. And that, of course, is broadly defined active learning. So the flipped classroom pedagogy, or you do some polling in class, quizzes, group discussions, think, pair, share, games, case studies, problem-based learning, all these can qualify as active learning component. And so if you do some of those things, that should be okay. We also need to produce higher quality videos, I think. So just reading, just talking into your laptop, reading the PowerPoints are probably not good enough. So we want to maybe produce some of these videos in the studio with professional editing, putting more pictures, animations. If the lecturer's voice is not good, maybe we can have a narrator voice over it. In general, I think we can be a bit more professional, technically, in the production of online videos. And we also need to integrate the videos with active learning activities instead of just, having the 3-hour lectures recorded. And we also need venues that facilitate these type of active learning activities. So our traditional classrooms and lecture theaters sometimes are very rigid, which is not conducive to discussions and other active learning modes. So I think we need to convert our classrooms into classrooms like this one, where people can chat, and then you see all these power plugs on the desk. They can plug on their computers, and then all these projectors, mini projectors in the room for them to do discussions. So I guess most of the venues would probably need some conversions to support these types of activities. So I think those are my observations in terms of online learning as a result of pandemic. Now I'd like to turn to some other mega challenges facing higher education now and after the pandemic. So the pandemic is, of course, a very major factor, I think, that would impinge on higher education. But there are also many other factors. And one factor is the social unrest that we experience in Hong Kong. But I think you also have your share in Thailand and in many other countries, especially also because of the pandemic. There is also a lot of unrest arising from people not happy with the distancing measures. So social unrest, the geopolitics, currently we are dealing with a war situation, and trade wars, which affects, I think, this part of the world very much, the Sino-US trade conflicts. Then the business, the industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. I think Walailak hosted a conference on that, and I was honored to be invited. That would also, I think, have major impact on higher education in terms of how we teach, what we teach, and also on costs. And then we also have the demographics. In Hong Kong, I guess in most industrialized countries, we find a rather sharp drop in the number of high school graduates. So that would also cause problems for universities. We also see a rather a steady increase in costs in running universities. I remember when Professor Sambak visited me in Hong Kong a few years ago, I told him that I have to make 1 million Hong Kong dollars, so like 4 million baht every day, every day to survive. And then last year when I visited Walailak, he asked me again this question, so do you still have to make 1 million? I said, no, now it's 2 million every day to survive. So costs are really increasing. And also we find, despite the fact there's a drop in relevant age group going to universities, but there are an increase in supply in university places. So I think that is going to be a major challenge. So I look at, I'm an economist, so I'm a health economist, but I also now manage a university. So I think finances is very important for universities. And if you have money, then I guess you can do a lot of things. If you have no money, even though you want to deliver high quality education, it would be very difficult. So what are the challenges in terms of finance? Here we have the 3 pillars. I think these are the 3 major sources of income for universities. Student fees, but for public funded universities, maybe the other pillar, the government subsidy, is most important. Like, for example, in my university, PolyU, government funds very generously. So maybe about more than 80 or 90% of funding comes from government. But my college is different. We are a private arm. We are a self-financing college. So 100% of my income comes from student fees. We get some subsidies from government, but very insignificant. And then there's the middle pillar, which constitutes the other incomes. So if you go to the US, these private universities, the Ivy League universities, they have huge endowments. So they support the operations using their endowment. And then, of course, each university would do some investment to make money. You get some donations, you get some income if you get external grants from research and consultancies. So that's the third source. So all these, I guess, are now under threat in terms of additional income for universities. And that is, I guess, because of the world economy, all these factors that I've talked about earlier, pandemic, social unrest, trade wars, geopolitical conflicts, population aging. I think the economy is not going to grow like in the past 10, 20 years. So there are predictions that GDP throughout the world will contract. So when the GDP contracts, then I think it reduces the government's ability to provide funds to universities or just to maintain previous funding to universities. It would also affect income from your endowment, from your investment, and from donations. So that is quite alarming if we have to operate under a context of negative economic growth. Now, the second alarming factor would be the number of high school graduates, secondary school graduates. So this is the picture in Hong Kong. I'm sure it is similar pictures in many industrialized countries. So we have a steady decline in number of students. So although it looks that it will bottom out in 2022, but actually this projections was done a little bit early. But now we see that it is not going to go up. The best scenario would be that it will be flat for a few years. In Hong Kong, particularly because we have more immigrations because of social unrest. So that is also a problem. And previously we rely on more immigration from China, from the mainland. But that is also not happening these days. So I think it's going to flat out. And if you look at the supply and demand situation in Hong Kong, the blue part represents the number of places in public funded universities. The pink part represents the private universities, including colleges like my own. So in 2015, there was kind of an equilibrium. There's a balance in terms of supply and demand. So the red curve represents the number of eligible students who can go to universities. But since 2025, we see that there is a surplus. There are more places than students. And this is, the trend continues. So we have more places than students. So each university is competing for more students. So unless you do well, you're going to be in trouble because of the supply and demand situation. And not only are you competing with your universities locally, students go abroad. In Hong Kong, about 10% of our graduates would study abroad. And then these are the distribution of countries they go to. So you are not just competing with your sister's institution locally, but you have to compete with overseas institutions. So we are going to get a decline in terms of income from student fees if we are not careful, because of fewer secondary school graduates, because of ample supply of places locally and abroad. So the top tier institutions would be okay. They will still get a lot of students. But if you are in non-top tier universities, you would face a lot of difficulties. So I think we need to, of course, as Professor Sambat was mentioning, you need to improve your ranking, etc., in order to attract students, because the market is very competitive. So the solution is that you need to be competitive in the full-time programs. And then you need to generate more income from other sources, from non-full-time sources. So this is what my college is doing now. And we want to take advantage of the challenges from Industry 4.0. So we need to convert our programs to better support industry so as to make our programs more attractive. So everyone talks about this digital transformation in terms of marketing, fintech, online shopping, AI applications in all different areas. Design thinking, we need to think out of the box. Shared economy, like Uber, Airbnb, Ping An Good Doctor. This is actually a Chinese platform for doctor shopping. You can get all the medical care you need in a platform, and doctors behave like taxi drivers under Uber. They can take calls and do telemedicine consultation. And DecoMan is actually a startup by one of our students, a student in my college. This is a platform for people who are wanting to decorate their homes. So actually, most people don't have a clue of where to get, help. Some of the designers are very expensive. So he has a platform where, they have all the information you need to get your home decorated. So these are some of the things we need to incorporate into our curriculum in order to make our curriculum attractive and competitive. And just having those techniques like STEM and IT is not enough. You need to combine them with the context. And hence my university has now introduced an option called secondary major. So what is a secondary major? So most people are familiar with a major and minor. So a degree normally is 120 credits. And then we have 25% of that for general education. And in the past, we have 90 credits, which is 75% for major and minor. And minor is normally 18 credits. But now we introduce a secondary major, consists of 36 credits. And what are these 36 credits for? They are for what we call ABCDE, AI, blockchain, cloud computing, big data, entrepreneurship. So you can do a major and then another secondary major from ABCDE, and then that becomes, your program. So the secondary major consists of 54 credits. So it's much bigger than a minor. So we feel that is the best way to equip our students. So you have the contextual knowledge. You can be in language, you can be in music, you can be in whatever. And then you do your ABCDE, the technology part, so that you can you can apply some of these things into your context. And then students from all disciplines has the option to choose the secondary major. So that is what we have introduced. And the consequence of the pandemic and Industry 4.0 is that we would find a lot of traditional jobs disappearing. So if you look at, for example, in Thailand, where tourism is so badly hit, so a lot of jobs will disappear. So a lot of high unemployment in some sectors. So they would need retraining. They need to be reskilled. They need to be retrained for some other jobs, some other sectors. And nowadays, people predict that people are going to change jobs very frequently. In your lifetime, you will change jobs 15 to 20 times, and even careers, 3 to 5 times. So there's no single career, no lifelong employment anymore. that is going to happen. So we need to prepare our students as well as those currently already in the workforce for this kind of change. So how should we do it? Now, given this Industry 4.0, a lot of jobs can be replaced by AI and machines. So we want to de-emphasize those skills that can be replaced by AI and machines. So we cannot beat AI, okay, humans' brains. We cannot beat machines for many tasks. So, but there are some tasks which AI is bad at. So we should try to emphasize those things that AI is not so good at. And knowledge is also so readily available on the internet for free. So delivering knowledge, the content, is also less important now. So we need to put more emphasis on qualities like how do we inspire people, how to be creative, how to be culturally sensitive, to be artistic, be tolerant, have empathy, altruism. So these things AI is very bad at, but we can try to instill that into our students and make them competitive. And then we need to emphasize more on soft skills. Those would be long-lasting. You know, technical skills get outdated so quickly. So soft skills, communication, logical thinking, problem solving, good EQs, good AQs. So these are things we really need to nurture to our students. And traditional lectures are probably not good in delivering these soft skills. And we also need to nurture entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, because that is so important these days. Because the game has changed now with the internet. You can really start your business very easily, startups and all that. So we need to expand beyond the pool of PhDs for entrepreneurs, for startups. We need to expand that to undergraduate research. We need to provide funding for our even undergraduate students to do things that they like to do. We need to provide them with co-working space, with mentorships. So in short, we can tap into other markets as part-time markets, short courses, and non-local students, because much of the content we teach now would become obsolete, if not already obsolete. So there are a lot of people in the workforce who need retraining. So short courses, not this lengthy, another 4-year full-time bachelor's degree, no one can afford that. So micro credentials, very short courses, but it's rigorous. It has to be validated by relevant QA bodies, and these micro credentials are stackable, so that if they wish to go back for formal qualifications, then they can transfer these credits. And so you need to also collaborate with industry, because now they have the cutting edge knowledge on many things. So some academics, they're either outdated or too theoretical. So we need to really partner with industry to teach. We need to support what now is called a flexible life horizon. So the traditional life horizon is that you study for 12 years of secondary and primary school, then 4 years of university, and then you go out to work, and then you retire, and then you die. So that is the linear life horizon. But now I think people don't want that. They want to do other things. They need retraining. So you study, you can work, and you can take some time off, do whatever you want, and go back to study, go back to work before you retire. Even after you retire, you study again for a second career, you work again before you die. So this is a flexible life horizon. And I think universities should support more of that. But most universities just put all the resources on full-time education, formal education. So my college is attempting to do that. So we want to facilitate retraining. We facilitate traveling, working in foreign countries. We facilitate a second career. So one of my colleagues was advocating retirement at the age of 50. So I was saying 50, people now live a long time. He said, yes, so that you give them enough time to have a second career. So if you retire at 60, 65, it's, not enough time to develop a second career. So to recap, I think because of the pandemic and other factors, our pedagogies needs to be reviewed. We need to have better quality online lectures and more active learning components. We need to review our curriculum to introduce more Business 4.0 stuff. We cannot rely on more government funding. They just don't have the money to give you more money. So we need to earn our own money through developing the part-time and continuing education market in a big way, not in a marginal way. So to conclude, COVID is a crisis. And in Chinese, if you know Chinese, crisis is made of two characters, danger and opportunity. The first word is danger. The second character is opportunity. So universities should take the opportunity to further develop their online education and to better support Industry 4.0. We need to have more micro-credentials, stackable, to support lifelong learning, and also important to generate income for the university. And universities can come out stronger and less dependent on public funding through being more learner-centric in terms of content and delivery method, and also in mapping the needs to career relevancy. So I think I'll conclude here. Thank you very much, and I can take some questions.
Hello. Is there any question or comments? You see any question or comments, Dr. Walailak, from the Zoom chat box? Not yet? Anyone? Any ideas or response about the post-COVID education? No? Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Peter Yuan's enlightening direction toward post-COVID-19 education. And we still have challenges ahead of us, like how to engage learners via virtual classroom, how to attend to their individual learnings, and how to promote rewarding learning. And also, I really appreciate your guidelines provide to us. One of the things that we need to think about is how to develop soft skill, where AI and machine learning cannot do that for us. Thank you, Dr. Peter Yuan, for your presentation. But before we proceed to the next session of keynote speech, I would like to take this moment to capture the picture on the participants on Zoom and our executive team here on site before we continue with an interesting presentation by Dr. Harding. Please turn your camera on, those who are on Zoom. I believe at the same time we are capturing pictures on Zoom participants. So turn your camera on with big smile. And now we are doing some photos at the Huatapan Hall as well. Okay. And also, we at Walailak University would like to thank you very much, Professor Dr. Peter Yuan, for your kind presentation. Everyone, please give Dr. Peter Yuan a big round of applause. And we hope that we'll be able to welcome you in person at Walailak University soon. Up next will be another interesting presentation by Walailak great scholars and also charming in chemistry, Associate Professor Dr. David Harding. His research interests lie in the synthesis of transition metal complexes that exhibit bistability, systems where the magnetic and optical activity of the complexes is coupled with other properties such as redox activity. Molecular materials developed from his research are expected to have applications in high-density information storage, molecular computing, spin-based molecular electronics. His current research and publications include spin crossover materials, molecular switches, molecular cluster. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Harding with his presentation, Switchable Molecular Materials, A Story of Research Excellence.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I was just checking that the microphone is actually working. Okay, well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I feel very humbled. And I'm British. I'm not very good at taking compliments. Okay. I'm just going to tell you a little bit of a story of some of the work that we've been doing. And I shall just time myself to make sure I don't bore you with my overexcitement in the research that we're doing. Okie dokie. So effectively, in the world, I mean, as Peter was talking about in his presentation, the world changes very quickly. And one of the ways in which the world is changing very rapidly is in the world of data. Okay? The chart you can see there shows data from 2009 to 2020. The light blue is the demand, and the dark blue is the supply. And you can see that demand has significantly outstripped supply for many, many years, and it's continuing to increase very rapidly. And this is because we all use Facebook, we use Twitter, we use email, we use online learning platforms. All of this requires huge amounts of data to be stored, and that data actually requires huge amounts of energy. Places like Facebook, for example, have massive data centers that can consume the same amount of energy as an entire city in the US. So getting this energy cost down is really important for the environmental future of the world. Current data storage devices are basically based on hard disk technology. This technology is really old. The reason we use it is basically because it's really robust, it's really simple, we can make it again and again and again. It's based around metal oxides, metal alloys. They have structures like you see here. Okay, they're very nice, they're very easy to make, but they have a major problem. It's really hard to modify the functionality here, and they're a major reason. When you store data on these devices, it requires a lot of energy to write the data, and that's why we have a problem with huge amounts of data being stored and huge amounts of energy being used. So the question that we have in my research group is, can we replace that? You know? Okay, I'm told that nobody can see the slides. I'm just going to quickly go into Zoom and share that. I can't share. I'm not allowed. Oh, there it is. It's now appeared. Okie dokie. There we go. It would have been nicer for somebody to tell me that sooner, but never mind. So our research is looking at the question, can we replace traditional data storage with a molecular solution? Okay? The reason we'd like to do this is that the molecules are highly tunable. Okay? The aim really is to turn a molecule into a magnet and then use that magnet to store information in a molecular device. That's what we're trying to do. Okay? Now, to do that, you need some kind of switchable property. Okay? And that switchable property that we're using is something called spin crossover. This involves a transition between two magnetic states. Here is a metal. It has 5 unpaired electrons. Don't worry too much about this. The important thing is that with 5 unpaired electrons, this is sort of magnetically on. Okay, and we can encode that as a digital 1. Under certain circumstances, we can move these electrons around and we go to a lower magnetic state, and this we can encode as being a 0. So we've now found a property that allows us to encode information to an individual molecule. Okay? The great thing about this particular physical property is that we can switch between the 1 and 0 state by changing things like the magnetic field, the pressure, the temperature, and we can even use light to actually switch this. And this is one of the big key ideas here, trying to store magnetic information using light. And this is much cheaper than the methods we currently use. Okay? Because it's multi-switchable, this gives us diverse applications. Okay? First things first, in our research, we had to discover actual molecules that have these properties. Okay? In particular, what we need is things that are switchable close to room temperature so that we can use it in a device. Okay? In this case, we used a metal complex. Okay? This is basically a metal surrounded by organic shrubbery. In this case, we take iron 3 nitrate, we react it with the organic chemical, and we have to exchange the nitrate anion for an anion called NTF2. This is called trifluoride. Okay? And the crystals look like this. Nice, shiny needles. Okay? It's very easy to make this material, and it's quite cheap as well. Now, it has to have the right magnetic properties. Okay? So one of the first things we do when we make compounds like this is to have a look at the magnetic properties. Okay? This here is what's called a squid profile. Okay? And all it really does, okay, is it shows us this lower magnetic state down here. This is called low spin, and the higher magnetic state here, high spin. You can see here that the cooling curve comes down this branch, and the warming curve comes up this branch, leaving an area in the middle here where we can access that 1 and 0. Okay? We can also use another technique to show that the magnetic profile here is found in the bulk material, and the gap here between these is around about 34 degrees Celsius. Okay? And reported this about 4 years ago in the first instance. Okay? So it's got nice hysteresis, it's quite close to room temperature, and the material is relatively inexpensive to prepare. But a really important part of spin crossover is that it's a collective property. That means not just a single molecule, but many molecules put together. So we need to understand what the structure is, so we can understand why the magnetic trace looks the way it does. Here is a technique that we use. It's called X-ray crystallography. It's basically like a microscope. It allows us to see the molecule. Okay? In this case, we can see we've got the organic components, we've got the metal, and we've got our anion here. This is the high spin structure at about room temperature, you know, okay? We can also cool the crystals down, and we can get that structure in the low magnetic state, okay? This is called the low spin state, and when we look at this, we can actually overlay these two structures. And we see that there's a really big change in the structure of the molecule. especially around this area, around the anion. And this is responsible for the wide hysteresis that we see in this material. Okay? So the selection of this group here, the anion, is central to the physical performance of the material, okay, in this case. When we look further, just from the individual molecule, and see how many molecules pack together, okay, we can have a look at this, and we can see it, the changes here. This time, we collected structures on something called a synchrotron. This is a very high energy X-ray source, and we're looking at what is called the unit cell parameters. And these guys change very abruptly in the cooling mode. In the warming mode, it's more gradual, but it's still big changes. Again, this is why we have this wide hysteresis, okay? Unfortunately, it's not a property you can predict in advance. You can kind of hope that it would be there, but it's unpredictable. Again, it's another one of these things that, as Professor Juan was saying, that, you know, AI can't predict this. You know, AI can do many things, but it cannot predict physical properties and chemical structures, okay? We have to make the material first. When we look at the anion, we saw there that there were big changes. But what does it look like? Well, again, when we go over the whole structure, it looks like this. In the low spin state, the anion has this structure, with the CF3 group pointing out towards me and the other one pointing down. This is called an intermediate conformation. We can measure this, we're scientists. It's around about 100 degrees, what's called the torsion angle between this unit and this unit. When we look at the high spin structure, though, now we have a very different orientation. Okay? This time the angle between this bond and this bond is close to zero. This is called the syn conformation in chemistry. And in fact, it's this that's responsible for the hysteresis. Effectively, the molecule switches like this, okay, during the cycle as it goes around. And we've collected structures all the way around the hysteresis to show that, yes, indeed, this is true. Okay? It required about 25 structures. Each one of these points is a single crystal structure. Okay? We had to collect a lot to understand in detail the behavior of this material. Looking beyond the individual molecules and the conformation of the anion, we see that the individual molecules are linked together. You can see these blue areas here and these orange areas here. These are what are called in chemistry pi-pi interactions. Effectively, it's like a domino effect. When one of the compounds undergoes spin crossover, it hits the neighboring molecule, it then undergoes spin crossover, and we have like a huge domino effect throughout the structure. This causes the molecule to switch from the high spin to the low spin state in only a few degrees Celsius. So this is, again, is vital to the magnetic properties we want to see. We can have a look at how these change during spin crossover, and effectively they get more dissimilar. Okay? When we look beyond that, we can see that the molecule, here is one of the chains, looking end on, it's connected to another chain here, another chain here, another chain here. The connection is what's called a CH pi. It's present in these blue boxes. This again allows this domino effect to be more striking. The interesting thing though is the molecule presents very strong two-dimensionality. So a question we asked ourselves, because remember, ultimately, we're trying to put these into a workable device, is, can we take advantage of this? Okay? We know, for example, that the iodine group here is quite prone to interacting with pi clouds. Okay? So we went and looked for a material that had that property. And what we did is we took copper, and we stuck on top of the copper a graphene sheet. Graphene is one of these new wonder materials that won the Nobel Prize about 10 years back. We dissolve our complex in a solvent and we simply allow the molecule to assemble onto the graphene surface. Okay? When we initially proposed this idea, our friend who is the expert in junction design was like, that's never going to work. Okay? But we tried it anyway, and it turned out it worked very well. So what happens here is once we self-assemble our spin crossover material onto the graphene, we then start a very soft electrode on top. It's called EGAIN, eutectic gallium indium. Okay? And it helps to provide a top electrode for our junction. Okay? It completes the circuit that we're creating here. Okay? So we've made our material, we've put it on the surface. We think we need to prove that. And the way that we prove this for a material like graphene is to have a look at something called Raman spectroscopy. Now, you don't need to understand what's going on here. The important point is that in the pure graphene, we have these red peaks here. And in the graphene with the complex, we see a shift in these peaks. This indicates that, indeed, the spin crossover material is stuck on the surface of the graphene. Otherwise, there would be no shift. We can also have a look at this using another technique called AFM, which characterizes the surface. Again, it's a bit like a microscope looking at the material. This is the pure graphene. This is with the spin crossover material. And then using a phase, you can see this is very smooth and this is not so smooth anymore. Clearly, we stuck the spin crossover material onto the graphene. We can actually have a look at the height of these guys running the AFM tip across the surface, and it estimates how much of the molecule is present. It tells us there's a single layer, so only a single layer of molecules. This means we're using very, very small amounts of material. It would be much cheaper to make than a traditional system. Another technique that we can use to have a look at this is called angle resolved XPS. This allows us to determine exactly how much of each particular element is present on the surface. We can compare that with what we expect based on the molecular formula of the complex, and we can see here we've got a bit extra carbon, a bit extra oxygen, but basically everything else is correct. It again confirms that the molecule is stuck on the surface, but it gives us a little extra information. The iodine XPS spectra shows a shift, and it indicates that the iodine molecule is the molecule that is interacting with the surface. Okay, so this is the extra piece of information. So our idea that the iodine and the two-dimensional structure would help to stick to the graphene is correct. However, it's all very nice. We've got the material on there. Does the junction work? This here, although it's a single picture, represents 1,200 cycles of this junction. Okay? And the black line represents the average. And we can see here that the conductance changes as we switch on the voltage. Okay? And it shows that we've got a very stable and highly reproducible junction. But what happens when we change the temperature? This here is the same type of plot, but this time using temperature. Okay? So we're going here from low temperature up to high temperature. We can plot this differently like this. In the low temperature regime, the conductance is low. In the high temperature regime, the conductance is high. The difference is about 1 order of magnitude, or 10 times higher. We also see that the spin crossover has now shifted to around about 40 degrees Celsius. Very accessible for any kind of device. So this has worked very well. Okay. We also theoretically modeled the junction. So here, part 1, the EGAIN top component, the spin crossover component, and the copper graphene. This allows us to determine, do we have one iodine interacting? Do we have two iodines interacting? Because the XPS only tells us the iodine is interacting. It doesn't tell us how. The computational studies indicate that the anion is attached very strongly to the graphene, and the iodine interacts strongly with the graphene, and it's the most stable conformation when the molecule looks like this, with the iodines pointing towards the graphene surface. Okay? Just some final thoughts. Obviously, I'm here today presenting, the research that we've done in the last few years. And this is a really hard endeavor. Research is incredibly difficult, okay? But it's really important to explore a significant problem. Don't do research where it's absolutely and completely predictable, okay? You're not going to get people to see that kind of research. Something I always tell my students is, do not be afraid to fail. One of the reasons that people often don't explore a significant problem is they're frightened of failure. Don't be frightened of failure. Failure is normal, and the reality is if you're not failing, you're probably not trying hard enough in terms of your research. It's too predictable, too obvious. As Peter mentioned in terms of, the whole aspect of higher education, we're no longer individual universities by ourselves, okay? We're part of an international community. So that means you need to develop links, talk to people in your research area, talk to international experts, work with them to help. And a final little bit here, this comes from the EU sort of strategic plan on materials research. And you can see here it's talking about one of the problems they see is not enough researchers are now doing blue sky research. So they want to pull people back into blue sky. They also want to push people into marketable research as well. We need to do both of these, okay, to be successful. Because the point right now is that, in a sense, by doing a lot of, as it were, patent-related and marketable research as we've been doing, we're kind of taking the books out of the library, and we're not putting new books, new knowledge into the library of human knowledge. And that's where Blue Skies research really comes in. Without putting new knowledge into the library, we're going to run out of things to develop into products in the future. So we must do this. Obviously, I'm just one person. A whole group of people were involved in this research. And as you can see, many different funding organizations. Chris at NUS did a lot of the junction work. Eliseo did the theoretical modeling. Dongchen at QUT did the fitting of things like the XPS data and so on. And Jacob and Jack helped us with the crystallography. My wife is my partner in crime in all of the work that we do, and is a constant source of support and ideas. And I absolutely wouldn't be here without her. So I have to acknowledge her as well. And of course, all the funding agencies. And thank you all for listening. And if you've any questions, I'd be very pleased to take them.
Any question? Any comments? You don't see anything? Assistant Professor Dr. Walailak? No, we don't. How about the audience here on site? No? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Harding, for your great presentation on the topic that AI can never replace us. And also, thank you for your contribution this morning to encourage us to do significant research without fear of failure. And we do hope that we'll be able to read your publication. And also, I think that some of the international audience on the Zoom platform might be interested in collaborate with your research. Can you put in the Zoom chat box your contact information just in case. Dr. David? David?
Yes.
Can you put your contact information in the Zoom chat box just in case the international audience would like to collaborate with you?
Okay, no problem. So you can contact me. I'm just typing in my email address, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
And
Dr.
I'm
Hadi.
also available on Twitter. I will just, put that in as well for anybody who, wants to talk there. I'm just trying to remember what the Twitter is, and there we go. Oh.
Great. Okay, so I hope that if you would like to do research with Dr. Harding, you have his contact. Up next is a plenary discussion on the theme of this research convention, the role of higher education in the post-COVID and human development. And it is going to be led by Walailak Vice President Surin Mai Sikrut. The discussion is honored by three distinguished guest speakers, Professor Dr. Yusuf Christie, Dr. Akharawit Kanjana Opad, and Professor Dr. Edmund Lee. While Vice President Surin Mai Sikrut is here with us at Huatapan Hall at Walailak University Hospital, the other three speakers will join us from the Zoom screen. The discussion will take around an hour to complete. Vice President Surin Mai Sikrut, please take the floor.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm actually in a huge auditorium, and what I'm wearing here today is the reddish orange, which is the university color. Welcome all to the panel discussion this morning on the role of higher education in the post-COVID and human development. For those who have just logged in, this is a part of the Walailak University's Research Convention 2022. This morning on the panel, I'm joined by three very distinguished scholars. First, Professor Yusuf Chisti from the School of Engineering, Massey University. Hello, Professor. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
All right. Hello. Second, Dr. Akharawit Kanjana Opad. Hello, sir. สวัสดีครับ สวัสดีครับท่านครับ Dr. Akharawit is Vice President of the National Science and Technology Development Agency in Thailand. And third, Professor Edmund Lee from the National University of Singapore. Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, right. So we are all set to go. As mentioned by Dr. Padarin, this panel discussion will take about an hour. We'll try to end on time at about 11:40. The format which I have proposed will go like this. Each of you will have about 8 to 10 minutes to outline key issues in relation to your professional point of view, from your professional point of view, in relation to the issue of the world in the post-COVID and human development, factoring, of course, the role of education there. And the order of the speakers will go like this. First, I will begin with Professor Yusuf, and then to be followed by Dr. Akharawit, and then to be followed by Professor Edmund Lee. And before I give the floor to each of the speakers, I will briefly introduce you, starting with Professor Yusuf Chisti, Professor of Biological Engineering in the School of Engineering, Massey University, New Zealand. It must be in the afternoon now in New Zealand, Professor.
Certainly,
Professor Yusuf GC is absolutely very distinguished in his career. He has produced over 300 publications which attract 1,100 citations. His index is 85, so this is extraordinary. He continued to focus his research on sustainable development productions of chemicals, materials, and fuels through biotechnology. Professor Yusuf GC has also been acting as consultant to a number of organizations, including in the private sector as well as in the government sector. So without further ado, Professor Yusuf GC, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Surin. Well, first of all, I believe that higher education is bedrock of economic growth, labor productivity, and individual well-being. So the role of higher education has actually not changed as a result of COVID. What has changed is to some degree the mode of delivery of higher education. So what has increased is the online component, but also what has increased is inequality of accessibility, because not everyone off campus has the same access to computers, other hardware, software, a convenient home space, internet. I mean, all these resources are expensive, especially for the less well-off students. So in principle, what we have learned from COVID-19 is that we do not have to have a conventional structure of educational delivery. We can do a lot of delivery by online means, using digital resources. And this may mean in the future that the universities do not require the infrastructure that they now have. Maybe we don't need as many buildings, as many classrooms, brick and mortar resources for future education. I guess that with careful redesign of curricula, we can actually replace a lot of the lab work with online labs as well. This may not be totally possible, but it can be done. You know, these days in medicine, for example, we have virtual dissection. So all this is potentially feasible. Now, I think transition to online education would have occurred anyways, whether there was COVID-19 or not. All that COVID-19 has done is accelerated the transition from the physical classroom to the online classroom. Of course, we can see that the distance education technology is improving. Only maybe a decade ago, we did not have Zoom and things like that. In the future, all this will keep improving. The issue would be, would this all be accessible to everyone? You know, people working from their homes all over, or would this be too expensive for everyone to make use of? Can you still hear me? So, well, all this means that educators and teachers will need some level of retraining. You know, what happened during COVID-19? Everyone attempted to move ad hoc. You know, there was we were learning as we went along. But I guess now we have to look back, maybe think about better training of educators for online work. And this, of course, will become more important. You see, government and taxpayers are seeking higher efficiency in education. There's only so much funding available for education. So whether COVID-19 or not, we may have to go online to a greater extent. Now, virtual education is in principle quite suitable because it allows a lot of people to access it. But of course, the cost of providing the access needs to be affordable. It needs to be lowered so that people can make use of it. So I think in the future, the guide words for distance education are: it needs to be simple, it needs to be effective, it needs to be affordable and accessible. And I think we will have pandemics in the future too. Human history tells us that there have been a lot of pandemics in the past, and so this could occur again. So we need to be prepared. And as I said, whether there's COVID-19 or not, we will go into online education more and more. And that's all I had to contribute. Thank you.
All right. For this round, we will have a lot to discuss. As said, we will have a total of about an hour, 60 minutes, an hour or 60 minutes, I mean. For the audience, there's a lot of senior staff sitting in this auditorium at Walailak University in Nakhon Sathamarat, Thailand. And there are a large number of people who are listening online as well. And we please do send in the chat box your questions. Of course, the audience in this auditorium can also ask questions verbally, I guess. I'll take them from here, from the stage. And then you may, each of the speakers may come in to add other things, other issues. And you can also exchange views between each of the three speakers as well. So next, I would like to invite Dr. Akrawit Kajana Opad, who is the Vice President of the National Science and Technology Development Agency, Thailand. This is a very important agency, a policy-making agency in the area of science and technology development. Dr. Akrawit is a former academic at Prince of Songkhla University. He has a PhD in oceanography, particularly working on marine national products chemistry, and he has also managed intellectual property and for the Thai government, and he is now play a very important role in advising institutions in the government in the area of science and technology development. So, Dr. Akrawit, you have the floor, sir.
Morning. Thank you very much, Ajahn Surin. Thank you very much, Walailak University, for having me here. And it's a great honor to be on the panel together with our two prominent speakers from New Zealand and Singapore. I'll take around 8 to 10 minutes to give you an overview on my thought regarding the role of higher education in the post-COVID and human development as I was assigned from Walailak University. We have heard this morning from the first speaker that the COVID-19 pandemic will greatly affect higher education from all different angles. So I echo him, and I like to sum it up in this slide. First of all, it's social and economic impact for the university students and staff because of the inequalities issue, the poverty of the parents, and the students who attend the higher education will be greatly affected after this. The loss of work, as we have seen so far, where, for example, in the southern part of Thailand, where we rely much upon the services industry in hotel and tourism. So I think the parents and families of the students lacking of income because of the loss of work. Of course, the psychological problems for us all. And then, as you can see, that the survey from Hong Kong has demonstrated clearly that students prefer to stay online but then that creates another problem of the digital divide. Not every student from every family could afford to have two devices together and then hooked it up to the high-speed internet to be able to have their education online so far. Last but not least is the housing and food securities of the vulnerable student populations. How can we provide a higher education to students when their stomach is still hungry and not enough food to eat, and not to mention that the food for the brains. And so we must rethink of the role of universities and higher education to be more resilient in order to serve the public goods and social responsibility. For example, how can we provide the inclusive and equitable higher educations and to guarantee that the health securities while we try to optimize the condition for the institution to advance quality and equities. We heard this morning again that the university income rely much upon the private, the government, as well as the students' registration fee. So this will greatly affect and measure the resilience of the higher education institutions. So I did my research a little bit when I prepared this plenary talk, that UNESCO has came up with many papers regarding how to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are two measures in order to ensure right to higher education for all and not to leave any students behind, is that they call it recover and redesign. For recovering, it can be the individualized tutoring that university can provide to the students when they return to the campus, the small learning groups for leveling in subjects that are critical because of the instrumental nature, or I think when we open the campus again and welcome back the students, we might need to consider the summer school intended in order to offer the compensatory seminars and the benefits in terms of quality of learning and equity far outweigh the cost that university have to pay. The redesigned approach is the advantage of technology. We have seen so far from the previous speakers that we must embrace the technology, digital platform, online learning, and many other pedagogic innovations in order to increase the quality and accessibility of the educations. So what happened then after post-COVID-19 pandemic? This is something that a scenario that has been laid out long before the pandemic. We look at the demography change. We know that the world is aging and the population is not equally growth in the same digits in the different part of the world. So in Thailand, especially Singapore as well, I think we are approaching the aging society. So of course that affect the incoming student number for higher educations, and that slow a lot of economic growth as well as the lifestyle. But then also need technologies that might come from higher education, for example, robotics and neuroscience. And there are many disruptive technology that will greatly affect our lives in the near future, either digital connectivities, data analytics, AI, as we have seen, even though Dr. David said that AI would not be able to do many things, but AI will do many other things that can replace the number of humans and then utilize the human resources in a far better way. Synthetic biology is the promising field that universities in Thailand, in any part of the world, must trying to be part of it, and sharing economy as well as digitization. So the challenges lie in between the standard and regulation and competition for talents, growth and sustainabilities. So and also, of course, the younger generations that will come to higher education will not prefer to work for just one company anymore. Many of you in the audiences would probably heard about the terminology gig economy, which is the freelancers, consultants, independent contractors, and professionals who prefer to work temporary, not a long-term employee of one organization any longer. So this is the challenges that still remain for us in the higher education professionals to be able to provide the human resources that has the skill for 21st centuries. Above all, I think this is very critical. How can we provide the critical thinkings, creative thinkings, collaboration, and communications? I do agree with the first plenary lecture that the design thinking will be critical for higher education in all fields. So we need to improve our mindset, skill sets of universities, professionals, staff, and professor, as well as to access to the tool sets that are available for design thinking course. So the role of the higher education in my part, will sum it up: the lifelong learning, upskill, reskill, and Thailand just launched the educational sandbox, which will help redesign of the curriculum. So I'd like to end my first round of the talk, Professor Surin, if you may allow. I love the quote coming from William Arthur Ward: "The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, but the great teacher inspires." Thank you very much.
Great teacher inspires. Okay, the next speaker on the panel is Professor Edmund Lee, who is a professor at the Department of Pharmacology, the National University of Singapore. Professor Lee's first degree actually is a medical degree. He's actually was trained to be a doctor, but somehow he's now he work in the area of pharmacology. He got having a PhD from the University of New South Wales in Australia. Professor Lee has been playing a very important role both in academic as well as in the government sector. He has been, consultants to the clinical trials and research at Changi General Hospital in Singapore. He was vice chairperson of Pharmacovigilance Advisory Committee, Health Sciences Authority of Singapore, and he played several roles in that agency, the Health Sciences Authority of Singapore, and he has published widely. And now, Dr. Edmund Lee, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you very much, Walailak University and Professor Surin, for this opportunity to share my thoughts about this very timely topic and very important topic for us, I think. I think many schools around the world are struggling with some of these issues and trying to find a solution forward. I think when we talk about post-COVID changes related to the COVID pandemic, we must be mindful that a lot of changes actually have been at the back end already. In changes in terms of higher education changes, it's been moving slowly, gradually. What COVID actually did was to highlight a number of very important deficiencies that we have in the system at the present moment. But it shouldn't stop at the COVID. It should continue, and I think you'll see that actually post-COVID, there will be continuing to be educational changes. Why do I say this? The traditional university model for about 1,000 over years has been an ivory tower kind of model. We don't like the word ivory tower, but actually that's the case because it's a place where information, data, knowledge is taught, expertise is taught, and students come from far and wide to the university to study and then to go out again. From about 50 years ago, from the third and fourth industrial revolutions, this model has been increasingly changing. From ivory tower kind of thing, the university approach has been a little more centrifugal, moving out students. Information is all over the place. It's not just held within the university campus and so on. So actually, the model has changed. Unfortunately, in a lot of universities, we are still holding on to the old structural model where we have a centralized facility where all the gurus are people with white hair and long beards are, and then dusty textbooks and all that. That seems to be the old model that still continues to persist in a lot of people's minds. But it's not just a structural model that is changing. It's also in terms of the approach towards higher education that is actually sweeping the world at the present moment. OECD published this document in 2018, and I think it's a very seminal publication because it really identifies the key issues that higher education has got to deal with. The first of all, this is about the learner agency, and this is really about the empowerment of the student to be a student. And this is very important because the world is changing. Our students are changing. They're no more the quiet, placid student that comes in and listens to the professor and so on. The student wants to be in power, in control of everything, and to be able to learn on himself. So the learner agency is very important. We need to deal with this. And then secondly is the need for a broad set of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values and so on. And this is extremely important also because actually the world is changing so much. Technology is changing so much. And the need to be able to assemble all these kind of things in a meaningful sort of way for the student becomes a very important part of that university education. And then thirdly is on top of all these things, on top of the content, is the ability to impart to the student competencies that enable the student to take part in society, to transform the society, and to continue to shape our future. Very important. And these are skills, what we call in our university, the life skills part of it. So I think various speakers have touched on various aspects of these things, but actually, if you trace it back, it comes down to basically this document that was published by the OECD in terms of enumerating all these issues. If you unpack this, a number of things become important for us to recognize. One is, if you want to deal with these issues, we need to identify the objectives, or at least to clarify in our own minds, or to redefine what these objectives are, because the objectives that were part of the university education experience is not applicable very much anymore. What we want to do now is to say, okay, our students are coming in, and how do we anticipate our end product is going to be? What are we going to put out into the society? And the product is going to be a lifelong learner who's equipped for a lifetime of learning. This is extremely important. Of course, we say this, and a lot of people will say, we are already doing this. Our students are all lifelong learners. Actually, it's not true. When you think about it, the old way of dealing with our students is we take an unformed student and then we pack in full of information and knowledge and all that, and then we cling wrap it and then put it out into the marketplace and say, here is our finished product. This is our graduate of our university. And this person is supposed to be equipped with all the knowledge and expertise that enables him to fulfill his professional functions. This, unfortunately, has got to change. So student now has got to become a lifetime learner, and you need to be able to equip him for a lifetime of learning. And we'll come down to the next part of this, and how do we do this? In order to do this, we need to be able to redefine the curriculum. So the redefinition of curriculum is extremely important. It needs to be broad-based, integrated, interdisciplinary, and incorporates life skills into it. There are all these terms that has been brought up before by this morning's plenary lecture by Professor Yuan about micro-credentialing, stackable credentials, and other term is the 60-year curriculum, concept of 60-year curriculum. And what this means is that when you put the students out, the curriculum is not meant to be the 3-4 years that the student is within the university environment. The 60-year curriculum says this curriculum prepares the student for 6 decades of self-directed learning, so they become a self-learner for 60 years in the workplace. And so this is the 60-year curriculum concept that people have been talking about. So in other words, we have to redefine the curriculum considerably. What is behind at the back of all these things, which people are not saying, that when you incorporate all these things into the curriculum, you must throw out some things. And a lot of the traditional curriculum that we put in has got to be redefined, redesigned, and in fact, you need to be able to throw out a large part of the traditional curriculum so that you have time to actually incorporate some of these other issues that we need to put into the curriculum. third, fourth, and fifth issues I put together in one lump because it actually addresses more or less the same kind of thing, which is really about remote learning. The question is, where does teaching and learning occur? And now I think we have to think in terms of learning and teaching and learning, not just on campus, not just in the classroom, the campus, but the student learns everywhere, anytime. And I think Professor Yuan referred to the 4 A's this morning. And I think this is exactly what it is. The student now is not the student of before. The student wants to learn everywhere, anywhere. He wants to learn while he's on the mass rapid transport. He wants to learn while he's sleeping at home or whatever it is. He wants to learn everywhere and everywhere. Just the same as we ourselves learn so much through the social media and through our own spare time in all kinds of bits and pieces in all kinds of places and all that. The student wants to be able to do that. So we need to reformat the pedagogy for this. So didactic, blended, immersive, whatever you call it. But the pedagogy needs to be personalized and needs to be adaptive. And I say this, I'll show you some of the problems that we have at the present moment in the next slide. Just keep this in mind. What sort of assessments? No more the milestone assessment at the end of the year, the big, massive milestone assessment at the end of the year. But what we need to go towards is actually to have more adaptive, formative assessments through the learning process so that the student can benefit and be very, very flexible in the way he approaches the learning. Right? So now, basically, based on all these kind of things, I want to take you through some of the remote learning issues. Remote learning has been with us for 40 years. The idea of e-learning has been with us for 40 years. In 30 years ago, it only started to come a little bit into the mainstream. It's been picking up. But unfortunately, e-learning, or what most of us think of e-learning, is really just digitization of content. What this means refers to is I put PDF online, I put my PowerPoint slides online, I put my webcast online, and I say I have therefore engaged in e-learning. Not only this, at the present moment, even when we do our Zoom lectures, what are our Zoom lectures? Actually, our Zoom lectures are actually our normal lectures that we have digitized and we have transmitted live. That's our Zoom lectures. So actually what we have been doing so far for e-learning or remote learning is really digitization of content. Now, I say this not flippantly. I say this it's very important because what happened with COVID-19? COVID-19 actually revealed all our flaws and deficiencies actually where this is concerned. So when COVID-19 occurred, we said, if we had engaged in e-learning and digitalized our pedagogy effectively, we would have no problems whatsoever. But in fact, we ran into all kinds of problems. People were scrambling to find out how to do this. People were scrambling to find out how to do examinations and assessments. And a lot of our lecturers and tutors really had no idea how to do this in a comfortable sort of way. There were problems, and these were some of the problems. Tutors were not equipped to perform well under these circumstances. Professor Yuan has alluded to some of this in this morning. If you listen to a lot of lectures that the tutors were giving online through the Zoom, you have these tutors who are kind of slouched in front of the computers, poor working mics, and things like that. And if you are a bad lecturer, you are even worse lecturer online. That's the truth, right? And going online didn't make it better. Online made it worse. Right? Second thing is that the disparities in access, and this is a reality. We always assume that everybody has got a fancy laptop with headphones and all kinds of things, and we can listen to lectures in the comfort of our own homes, aircon rooms, and all that. Not true. Many students are in multi-children families. They only have one old computer desktop sitting on and they have to share this with 3 other siblings who have also got to do online learning. There are barking dogs in the background. There are crying children in the background. You have relatives walking around the background half naked or half dressed or anything like that. So it's really a not very conducive environment for online learning, remote learning. This is a reality. Some societies are able to deal with this better because they are maybe more affluent. Some societies, particularly rural communities, cannot deal with this. Very difficult. So how do we deal with these disparities in access? Thirdly, lastly, is the difficulties in proctoring. We cannot run away from this. If we want to have online learning, we must be able to proctor assessments, and we have no means to proctor the assessments appropriately. Students have got no resources to set up the facilities to enable you to proctor their involvement in exams. So what do? We really need to redesign the whole assessment framework in order to do this properly. So big problems, and we cannot run away from this. So post-COVID, what's going to happen post-COVID, having to deal with this? Now we are at a situation that we are just barely getting all these processes in place. Then we say, oh, COVID is running down, the pandemic is almost over, we're moving to endemic situation, we're all going back to normal. What does this mean? The easy thing is that we all go back to the old days where we say go back to the classroom, we digitize our content, we do all kinds of things like that. So this is, do we want to do this? Answer is no, we shouldn't do this. We should move on and press on to greater digitalization in terms of the higher education and beyond, because this is the future. We cannot go back to the past again. The European Commission actually published this digital education plan, and this is something that we probably need to look into in a little bit more details. Priority areas, entire ecosystem of digital education, enhancing skills and competencies for the digital transformation process. I think this is also very important. We forget this. We forget that our staff, our tutors need to be empowered to do this properly. What is the problem at the present moment? Problem is we employ staff on the basis to do bench research. They're all researchers. Then they don't want to spend a lot of time trying to reimagine the education process. They want to just go into a classroom and give a lecture. Right. So this whole process, it needs to be thought of very seriously, and it's a big thing to actually be engaged into. You need to give serious thought about it. So I just end up with this particular slide, which is the OECD slide, which is really we have to deal with the learner agency. We need to reimagine and redefine our curriculum, even in the professional curriculum, to think in terms of how we can integrate the information, interdisciplinary information, incorporate skills, work on attitudes, skills, life skills, and things like that. And we need to be able to do this in a comprehensive sort of way. So it's a big task. It's a big task that's facing us, but we cannot run away from it, because this is the future. Things are moving so fast that we cannot afford to look backwards. We need to just keep on moving forward, because things are moving so fast. After COVID-19, after any wars that may appear, this is going to be a very, very big problem. So we need to be able to address this. So with that, I just want to end with that. So thank you very much.
It's not very straightforward. So that's a lot of food for thought. Thank you so much for all the three speakers. We do have quite a bit of time, and there are now some questions coming in. I will try my best to go through all of those questions that have been typed in the chat box sent through to me at the moment. But there's a lot of issues there. I think Professor Yusuf Jesse was talking about teachers need to be retrained. And then Dr. Akarit was emphasizing also the importance of developing soft skills, something that was mentioned by one of the keynote speakers, Professor Peter Yuan. And then Professor Lee absolutely was really be very realistic about problems that we are faced with, in whether COVID or not. We need to change in accordance with things, with the changing world, particularly the digitalizations of the world, the digitalizations of life, actually. So there are quite a lot to digest there. I'd like to, first of all, I would like to pick up on what Professor Lee was talking about, the redefining the curriculum. This is very at the core of our task as administrator, as teacher at the higher education. In fact, it's all level of higher education. We have to talk about the curriculum. So can you possibly expand a bit further on that? I mean, what was wrong with the curriculum in the past, and how do you see, I mean, of course, you have already mentioned about the digitalizations of contents, of delivery and everything, and then we'll come back to Professor Yusuf and then Dr. Akrawit. Dr. Lee.
Thank you very much. I think very importantly, the old curriculum was very restricted according to disciplines. There were very clear borders. In a medical school, for example, you come in and then say you've got to do anatomy, biochemistry, physiology, pharmacology, and these were all done in very strict boundary segments. With the new curriculum, as we move forward, this needs to be integrated. And in Singapore and US, I think we have been engaged in this very long, tedious process of how to integrate this thing, how to integrate in an interdisciplinary way, not in the multidisciplinary way, as in you just put in proximity all the disciplines, but you actually have to integrate interdisciplinary within a particular topic, right? The challenge for this is that the tutors themselves were not interdisciplinary. They all came from defined disciplines, right? So there is a mindset change, and there needs to be a desire and commitment to be able to move out of your comfort zone and to think about the curriculum in a new sort of way, to redefine it, and then present it to the student in a meaningful sort of way. Bear in mind that with the changes in the curriculum that the OECD contemplated, you've got to make space for these kind of things. And you make space for these kind of things, you've got to abandon some of the old content that may not be applicable to the future. So you really need to go in and audit everything and to redefine everything and reassemble everything together. It requires time, effort, and resource. And it requires the school to actually to talk to the staff so that you get buy-in from the staff. It cannot be a top-down, I tell you what to do and you do. There must be buy-in from the staff because the staff must participate in this process. Sorry, I can't hear you, I think.
Professor Yusuf, you were talking about teachers need to be retrained, and I guess what Professor Dr. Lee Adman Lee was talking about is very interesting, the change in the curriculum. Coming from New Zealand, I guess you have a lot of new things coming up in terms of the pedagogical practices and all of that. To what degree things have changed in relation to the curriculum that Professor Lee was talking about? Maybe you can reflect on the example of New Zealand, or in fact, Professor Yusuf Chisi has experience in other countries as well. Your turn, sir.
Well, I believe a modern education system needs to emphasize self-led learning. People must be capable of learning all through their life, lifelong learning. I left the university as a student more than 30 years ago. But from that time on, I have kept learning, and I guess other people have kept learning new software, new skills, use of Zoom. So we need to be able to communicate online. For example, we need to be effective teachers online. Our students need to be retrained to be effective learners online. All that is important. But in 4 years in the university, or even 10 years in the university, by the time the student graduate, they have certain competencies, and one of those competencies needs to be the ability to self-learn, to find information resources on the internet, to effectively use these resources and learn. If you want to learn about a new subject, you look for it and you maybe study it. And that's how things work or will work. One cannot be in the university all the time, obviously. So those are my views on it. So, but the point is, resources will need to be made available to everyone more equitably. Maybe there will be less investment in the infrastructure of the universities, less investment And some of this funding will need to go into developing dispersed infrastructure that's accessibility for all, instead of centralized accessibility to education. The entire paradigm of university system will gradually need to evolve. The current system is not for the future, I think.
Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to turn to Dr. Akkarawit. Dr. Akkarawit was talking about disruptive technologies, among other things, and you being the Deputy President of the National Science and Technology Development Agencies of Thailand. How do we cope with disruptive technology? We, meaning universities. Perhaps we can also talk about different levels of education, but from the higher education sector. How do we cope with this? We might be limited by the budget, or is that the issue of budgeting, the issue of having increased budget, or what else do we need to consider in coping with this disruptive technology?
Thank you, Ajahn Surin. One way of handling the disruptive technologies is to be able to see the future before it hits you. So I would say that foresight is really important. You should know what is coming, and if better yet, you should know when approximately will it comes. So by doing that, you are allowed to scan for the horizons and looking for any disruptive technology signals, trends that actually emerging in your particular field, especially in education, so where you want to actually catch up with the technologies. So when you see that signal and trends, then you then create scenarios in order to have the vision and mission to prepare for the strategic actions of the disruptions if ever happens. So that somehow linked the foresight into the way that any organization, including higher education institutions, will be able to be more resilient. As I mentioned earlier in my slide, that university need to be resilient not only in the way of managed university, but also resilient in terms of providing the educations, the curriculum development. That's why I said that the pedagogic innovations, and then all three speakers said all the same thing, that curriculum has to be changed, and changed faster than it will be changed by the outside environments. Last but not least, university staffs, including professor and academic support, has to be resilient. That means you need to be able to change at all time and to be flexible as much as possible. Otherwise, the first group that will be disrupted is not the university, but the employee.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think what was mentioned by Professor Lee about the digital education action plan as proposed by the EU Commission is probably relevant here. But now I would like to give the opportunity to the audience who have sent in a lot of questions, and one of which is a very interesting one, and probably this might be more in the context of Thailand, but I guess any one of you can address this. Would the panel agree, this is a question, would the panel agree that to improve the curriculum, which we are talking about, governments plural, to ensure sensible QA requirements, quality assurance requirements for universities in line with the new needs of universities. I think this is very good because we are all under the supervision of government, wherever you are in whatever countries. So would you care to address this, please? Professor Edmund Lee first, perhaps. You see the question there, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting question, a very important question. I think There is no straightforward answer to this because basically I think the university or higher education environment is changing and evolving even as we speak. So in the past, where we have a very clear idea of what a university should be doing, and there are very clear, measurements to be able to say whether a university is performing well or not well. Those were a lot easier at that time. But now, as a university moves forward, it becomes more and more difficult to find those metrics to be able to measure the performance at the university. The old ranking metrics probably doesn't work anymore, and I think I would be happy to throw it away so that we don't have this. But unfortunately, a lot of universities still want to depend on those metrics. There is a lot of discussion in Singapore at the present moment about whether or not the university education continues to be relevant anymore. To the extent that maybe don't go to the university even. Micro-credentialing is what you need. So you need to be able to continue to develop skill sets along the way. And why do you need to have to spend 3 years, 4 years, 7 years in a university before you go out and work and fulfill a function in society? So the university's function is to prepare the student to go out. So maybe you don't need the 3-4 year curriculum, the standard 3-4 year curriculum or 5-year curriculum. So in terms of whether or not the university can redefine itself to be able to meet the society rather than to go back, depend on the old format where we have 3 or 4 years of cramming and then take one major exam, then you graduate. Maybe that's not relevant anymore. So I think the universities have to think about it. And there's no consensus about this, I don't think, in the world at the present moment. So I think it's going to be a fairly unstable situation for universities as they try and find some way forward into the future.
Well, if I could add something to this, universities do need to train generalists, but universities also need to train experts. So there are two different parts here. I mean, not every student trained needs to be an expert, but there needs to be some high-level advanced experts who need to be trained, and expertise needs to be maintained in the university. But at the same time, we need to be training a lot more students who are capable across the board, generalists who are able to succeed based on ability to communicate, ability to self-learn. In the past, we lectured and expected the students to be examined based on those lectures. Increasingly, I think we should give them, the students, an assignment to self-learn on a given topic and examine them on this topic without teacher intervention. You learn yourselves. And this is a skill that needs to be developed and needs to be examined to be developed.
Right. Professor Dr. Akarawit, would you like to come in to share your views on this, please, sir?
Certainly. First of all, I think I have to agree with Professor Harding that the government and universities should somehow join hand in hand and looking at the university needs rather than putting too much pressure on university in order to become flexible and to be more resilient. The role of universities, however, has to change rather than being knowledge disseminators. There are someone else doing that job better than you online and free. So the role of university as the knowledge institutions after the COVID-19 pandemic and for the future has to change. Whether can you fit with the customer personas of the general populations that are the alphas, the C alpha, that they can learn online, they can do pretty much anything online. But what is the real function of university then? What is the why should they come to universities if the knowledge dissemination can be found anywhere? So I think that's the role that university had to think and each university may have different services or different personas in order to respond to that. But I think a standard alone will not be enough, because I think the standard is meaningless in terms of education for the younger generations. They probably think that they would go for something that they want. They don't even care for the certificates or the degrees. So the upskill, reskill that I mentioned would be something that they actually want to learn and should be able to take away with them in order to have the career that they want.
All right. It seems we are under pressure. As Professor Peter Yuan was saying, that the word crisis in Chinese has two components. One is danger, the other one are opportunities. Of course, we are using the pandemic as a point of departure to talk about some obstacles, some opportunities being faced by the universities around the world. The other, I mean, while we are taking into a really serious considerations about training people in soft skills, as opposed to along with the disciplinary skills, universities are now also pressured by this, fact that we have to be at the top. And this is the very point that Professor Peter Yuan, the keynote speaker, was talking about, that university survival depends a lot on whether we can move up the ladder. And now it's not about nationally or regionally, we are talking about the world. Walailak University, for example, we are now working very hard to get ranked by Times Higher Education, for example. And we see this is not an option anymore. It is not a question of whether, well, we can do it, we don't want to do it. It's just a matter of we must do it. Now, Singapore is very high up in the international educational ladder, measured by any agencies. New Zealand, of course, is second to none. New Australia, you've been very familiar with this situation. So I'd like to comment on that. The situation in Singapore, or the importance of being on the top tier, how the university in New Zealand cope with this situation, or is it a big issue at all? And then we'll come back to, and then, Dr. would like to ask Dr. Akrawit as well. So, Yusuf, you go first.
Well, I guess name recognition for the universities is a big issue, just as name recognition for every academic is a big issue. There was Aristotle and Plato and Socrates. They are still known today, and I guess everyone in the university would like to be at the same level, although we cannot be. But that is what is driving the university system. But I guess good education for undergraduate students needs to be scored in assessing university systems, not just recognition based on expert training or research training. And I believe this will change as we go along, as people recognize that it's not just expertise training that should be used to assess universities, but also the quality of general students emerging from there, their employability and their ability to contribute in society are important. So it's the issue of how the universities are going to be assessed in the future. And this will not remain static. It will change, I think.
Thirdly,
thank you. This is a little bit of a difficult question to answer, and I cannot pretend to speak for my university, so I'm going to be very careful about it. But, I think fundamental to this consideration is the fact is, what is the university? Is the university an educational institution that does research, or is the university research center that teaches. It's not a binary choice, right? There are shades in between graduations. Yeah. So the question is where you want to position yourself. A lot of the ranking actually has to do with research excellence. And this is what all academics want to do. They want to go out there. Now the question is, how relevant is that to the university mission going forward? So all universities have got to define for themselves, what do I want to be? Am I a research institute that teaches, or am I a teaching institution that does good research? So and accept that reality. In Singapore, I don't want to say this as a public policy kind of thing, because I don't have inside information about what the government thinks in that. But I suspect the emphasis on ranking is starting to fade in a lot of quarters, because the reality is that if you want to address the educational mission, you've got to sacrifice something. You've got to redirect your staff's focus away from just being locked up in the bench and achieving research excellence. You've got to refocus a little bit on the educational mission, to redesign the curriculum, to redevelop new pedagogical tools to allow you to do that. This takes time. If you don't give the staff time to do this, you are not going to achieve it. But yet, if you give staff time to do this, it will be the expense of the research endeavor. It's a zero-sum game.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Even though you can't represent NUS on this matter, but I think still, I think it's very important. Your point is well taken, that research is research. Excellence in research is still there, that we need to focus on the quality research. Dr. Akharavit, I'm not going to hold you responsible for this, even though you're Thai government official. But would you like to comment on the significance of being on a top tier, sir?
I think it's really important that university or any knowledge institute should remain their core function of discovering new knowledge, generating new knowledge. To be able to do that, of course, it's undeniable that you have to do research at the frontier level. But you need to know yourself before you putting any research program at your institution, because the research cost at the global level is not cheap. It's expensive. So how can government with limited resources can support the frontier research for Thailand, for example, to be able to compare to Harvard, Stanford, and MIT? So I think all university cannot be the same as we were before. But that doesn't mean that we prevent anyone from collaborating to one another. So to join research, to be on the same platform, and then looking at the grand challenge of the world rather than the small problems that everyone trying to tackle to get on their own. I think it is important that there will be a bigger platforms in order to do research together and then share resources. When I say that the sharing economy is not only Bitcoins and Airbnb, but it can be a sharing economy for research and academia as well.
Well, if I could just
yes, please come in. Please.
Here, I think good researchers can also be good teachers. Research and teaching are not two different things here. The other thing about the expensive research, not all of us have to try to send rockets to the moon. We cannot do so. But good research can be done cheaply too. It can be theoretical. It can contribute to society in various ways. It does not necessarily have to be expensive. So those are just my thoughts on this.
I can't agree with you more on that, Professor. Absolutely. They tend to go together, being a good teacher and being a good researcher. One of the things that I would like to raise with all the panelists is this thing about international research collaboration, particularly we heard from the Deputy permanent secretary of the higher education ministry from Thailand this morning, talking about high-level research, science, and others area actually is quite universal. So it's no accident, it's no strange that such an agency like the Times Higher Education put a lot of emphasis on international research collaborations. And in fact, as Professor David Harding was talking about his project this morning, that is the international research collaboration par excellence. It is a good example of how international research collaborations leads to such a very cutting-edge research result. But I'm not sure what sort of specific questions here, but are there ways that we can accelerate or international research collaboration, or is already there good enough? People have been doing it. Professor Harding has been doing it for years. Or are there other ways that we can promote? Are there any considerations that we should look into in order to promote international research collaboration? Professor Lee?
I have no clear answer to this one. I think international collaborations are a lot easier now because of the digitalization and the internet access. So you have access to a lot of cutting-edge information. It used to be that we needed to go to conferences to go and get the latest findings. Now we have the latest findings before we actually go to international conferences, and we can make friends with any esteemed academic around the world that we want to work with. The question comes down to what sort of resources are available for you to actually do the bench work in your own organization. I don't know how else we can approach this particular problem. Certainly the ability to collaborate across institutions and globally is much easier nowadays.
Certainly, I agree that collaboration is so much easier today than it used to be 20 years ago, for example. But still, you'll find that people who like to work individually, and I think there needs to be a place in the university system for those individuals too. And that's the strong point of universities. If people can succeed through individual work, let them do so. Of course, collaboration is always good, wanted, supported, preferable, but not everyone will collaborate.
Professor Yusuf Chisi, let me follow up on that because I'm very interested in your experience. You have collaborated extensively with academics from so many countries in the world: Canada, Cuba, India, Iran, Malaysia, Romania, Spain, Thailand. What are some of the key lessons you learned from all of this extensive international research collaboration, if you can say, to emerging academics or researcher?
You see, in my view, collaboration begins through personal relationships. That's the first important point. I mean, you can't have collaboration unless you have a personal relationship. And all the people I collaborated with, I have done a lot of collaboration with people in Thailand. I published with multiple universities there. I spent time at Kasasat University. I spent time at Walailak University. I met people, and that's how collaboration develops. So it's, and of course, both parties need to be prepared to devote some time to it. That's my view on it. You can collaborate with anyone. I mean, there are millions of scientists working all over the world in very similar areas. So there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration.
That is a very important point about personal relationship, which means that probably face-to-face contact, having workshops together, conferences, still quite important, despite the fact that the things have been made more possible by the virtual contacts. So now I'm going to be a bit tough on Dr. Akharavit here. because he's the vice president for the very important agencies of Thailand. And pardon me if I'm not very well informed about the role of this agency. But have you done anything along those lines?
In terms of
international research collaborations? Yeah.
Yes, we do. Actually, there are so many platforms here at North Star that we do support the international collaborations among the researchers here at NSTDA. As we do have the international offices for collaborations under many platforms. And then, of course, the collaboration has not come only from the universities or research institute itself, but since North Star is looking across the technology readiness level, so we try to bring in the players from the private sectors in order to take a research forward and bring it to the industry. My role at the Technology Management Center is to support the Thai private sectors or the foreign company to come and do research and innovation here in Thailand, and we do link them up with the research institutions within the countries, and then vice versa. For example, we do have a Talent Science Park, where it is a home of the research and innovations for the private sectors. We do have many foreign direct investment companies doing R&D here in Thailand, working together with Thai research institutes and universities. And that's the way to look at the international collaborations, not only with the same topic of work, but also along the value chain of that research. The upcoming platforms for the country is the Eastern Economic Corridor of Innovations, or EECI, in the Eastern Seaboard. So that is also the home of the innovation collaborations that might take place between research institutions here in Thailand, and as well as the private sector. We do have a company from overseas coming and doing research with the Thai researchers here, and we do need more researchers to work in order to drive the Thailand BCG, biocircular and green economy forward for the next 20 years.
Okay, I think on that note, we have come, I think all of you have answered very important questions, and we have come to the end of our discussion. I'm sorry for those who have sent in questions that I am not able to go through all of the questions, and I'm very sure that you will have other opportunities to discuss with the speakers. I'm really grateful to, I have to draw this to an end now, and I have to express my appreciation and gratefulness to all the panelists today. Professor Yusof Chisti from New Zealand is so kind with his time, and Dr. Akarawit, despite his busy schedule as a government high-ranking government officer who has come in to join us today, and Professor Edmund Lee, who has contributed a lot to our university in his various capacity. I understand that he has some collaborations with the staff of Walailak University as well. So thank you so much for your time, both particularly the speakers and for people who are attending this in this auditorium, both those who are attending in this auditorium and online. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. And I have to draw this to an end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Surin Mai-Sikrit, and all the distinguished guest speakers of the plenary discussion on the role of post-COVID education and human development. I think we now all agree that virtual education will be a new normal part of post-COVID education. Students are getting used to it, and in fact, as Dr. Peter Yuan has told us, that most of the students prefer it. However, scholars around the world are working on how to manage virtual classroom efficiently and make them rewarding learning experiences to learners as a group as well as an individual learner. Post-COVID education is in fact an exciting challenge that opens doors to opportunities for future forms of quality education. Before we close this morning opening ceremony 2022 Walailak Research Convention, we would like to invite you to meet Walailak University top 2% world scientists awarded by Stanford University, and they include Associate Professor Dr. Manat Chaijan, Associate Professor Dr. Viranut Nisapathorn, Associate Professor Dr. Nathawit Watana Sakunpong. Let's meet them on the prepared video clips.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Walailak University. My name is Viranut Nisapathorn, graduated as a medical doctor from Lady Hardinge Medical College, University of Delhi, India, and master in clinical tropical medicine from Mahidol University, Thailand. I'm currently working as an associate professor at the School of Allied Health Sciences, Walailak University. It's a proud moment that I was recently listed as one of the world's top 2% scientists in tropical medicine, released by Stanford University and its alliance. For my research activity, I have been actively involved in research area of interest in the past 2 decades. In the early 2000s, my main research focused on tropical parasitic diseases, especially Toxoplasma gondii, a zoonotic protozoan parasite causing a disease called toxoplasmosis related to clinical epidemiological aspects and diagnostic challenges in different groups of human population. During the late 2000s, my research interest shifted to water-based research, particularly in the molecular epidemiology of waterborne parasites like Cryptosporidium and Giardia, which cause gastrointestinal problems in humans and can be found in many untreated water sources. And my current research work is on another waterborne parasite in free-living amoebae, with a special focus on Acanthamoeba triangularis, using in vitro culture, high-throughput microscopy, molecular, omic, nanotechnology, autophagy, and molecular docking and dynamic simulation technique. In addition, I'm a coordinator of International Research Network, Southeast Asia Water Team, and World Union for Herbal Drug Discovery, with solid partners in different parts in Asia and far away. I have published over 100 scientific articles and book chapters, as well as a member of the editorial board of reputable journals. I also actively involved in review of over 50 international journals. I have also been invited as an guest and associate editor, adjunct faculty, and visiting professor. It's clearly that there is a published or peerless culture of academic research, and it's quite common to see that in order to publish an article in a reputable journal, you need to have a good publication record. Even if your work is worthy, it's only be considered if the author is recognized. At the beginning of young researcher, you usually struggle to get published in a good journal, even though the good quality of your work, but somehow it may lack the fineness and attention to details. It's frequently seen at the first time for everyone who may face some rejection in the beginning. If you make the changes suggested by the reviewer and keep improving your manuscript every time, you can expect to get published in a good journal finally. One way to get a head start to publish 1 or 2 papers with your advisor who has substantial number of publications to his credit and is likely to be a household name in his field, it therefore will be easier to publish in a reputable journal. If that is not the case, hard work and perseverance will help you achieve your deserved goal. By focusing on the quality or novelty of the work, exploring gaps in the existing literature and try to find a unique or catchy research question that's relevant to the world today. Paying more attention to detail of a significant result that are appropriately supported by substantial evidence. Language of the manuscript. When you decide to submit your readiness manuscript to a good impact and peer-reviewed journal related to your field or multidisciplinary, which significantly help your career milestone, such as grant application and promotion. As we know, people all around the world have succumbed to COVID-19 pandemic in the past 2 years. In this post-COVID-19, drug discovery is one of the main focus of research worldwide, and it is no exception. Even in my area of research, using phytochemical property of the medicinal plants in combating emerging diseases like COVID-19 and parasitic diseases such as acanthamoebiasis caused by Acanthamoeba triangularis, particularly involving plants in Asia and Thailand. Research plays a significant role in higher education and leads major advances that enhance, inspire, reflections, ideas, and plans that further explore challenges and opportunity for more international collaboration, including university, private sectors, civil society, and global international network. This opens up to another landscape in terms of research, development, innovation, and manufacturing to bridge the gap between academic research and industrial setting, and that the so-called research beyond frontier become materializes. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Manat Chaijan. I am an associate professor and a research director of the Department of Food Science and Innovation, School of Agricultural Technology and Food Industry, Walailak University. I am also a director of Food Technology and Innovation Research Center of Excellence, Walailak University. I obtained my bachelor degree in Food Technology from Walailak University and PhD in Food Technology under the Royal Golden Jubilee PhD program from Prince of Songkla University, Thailand. During my PhD, I spent 6 months as a visiting scholar at the Mid-Science Section, Department of Animal Science, University of Connecticut, USA. In my PhD thesis, I worked on interaction between myoglobin and myoflora proteins in dark flesh fish used for ceramic production, and I published 9 papers in Q1. I began working as a lecturer at Walailak University after graduation. I was promoted to assistant professor 2 years later and associate professor 4 years after. It is currently being processed for the official announcement of my professorship. My area of expertise is food science and technology with a focus on the chemistry and biochemistry of seafood, meat science and technology, and functional food ingredients. My current research focuses on improving the quality of seafood, particularly surimi and other fishery products, as well as the use of meat byproducts and local bird materials to produce functional food ingredients. Basic research or discovery research, in my opinion, is so important. It is not viable for long-term application without the fundamental knowledge. So our team's research normally begins with fundamental research and continues with applied research or linkage research. For example, if I wish to improve the gel strength of surimi from dark flesh fish, such as mackerel and sardine, I must first learn about their muscle composition and the gelling characteristics. We can design a strategy to improve the gel once we have this knowledge. I have received various grants from national granting agencies such as Thailand Research Funds and National Research Council of Thailand, as well as some co-funding from Walailak University and the food industry. For the international grant, I spent a year as a visiting researcher at Chalmers University of Technology, Sweden, to conduct a research on seafood chemistry. I would like to say that the research experience and publication are very important while applying for a grant or research position. To be honest, I enjoy doing research and publishing the finding in order to engage with the food science community and other disciplines. I currently have 88 papers in the Scopus database with an H index of 22 and over 1,650 citations. As a result, I was recognized as one of the top 2% scientists in the world in the field of food science this year by Stanford University. Because the number of publications, H index, co-authorship, and citation all have a role in the ranking, I believe that collaboration is always essential to research. As a senior academic staff, I supervise both master's and PhD students. Since 2008, I've been a major advisor and co-advisor to over 20 students. I currently supervise 7 PhD students, 4 are national and 3 are international. I believe that graduate students are important to fulfill and strengthen the university research environment. Graduate students can also serve as an important link to international collaboration. For example, some scholarships such as the RGJ or RRI scholarship allow my students to conduct part of their research abroad. Professors from Sweden, Denmark, and the United States, for example, are co-advisors of my PhD students. And I also have a research agreement with professors from Ningbo University, China, to collaborate with the research and publications. I regularly attend the conference on food science and related area to improve my specific academic skills. I used to be a keynote speaker in international conferences, for example, in Indonesia and in Thailand. I am also serving as an associate editor for Songkla Journal of Science and Technology, a section editor for Trends in Science, and ad hoc reviewer for several international journals. I would like to highlight some of my research. For example, pH processing as a cold refinery approach for recovering protein from animal-derived raw materials. The pH procedure is an effective method to produce protein isolate from protein raw materials. It typically begins with the protein extraction at the appropriate acid or alkaline pH, followed by isoelectric or PI precipitation. We developed the pH technology to efficiently recover functional and nutritious protein isolates from food proteins, including fish and their byproducts, poultry, egg byproducts, insects, and to eliminate toxic compounds and off-odor substrates contaminated in fish. It is an effective method to separate lipids, pigments, and other impurities from protein raw materials, and generally allow the proteins to retain their functional properties, such as gelation, emulsifying, and foaming, which can be used to many food formulation. So this method can be used to produce healthy and functional protein isolate. It is well correlation with the SDGs for end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. For more detail, you can find in my published articles. Finally, I'd like to express my gratitude to my colleagues, students, granting agencies, and Walailak University for their support of my research. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Associate Professor Dr. Nathawit. I am one of the members in the School of Engineering and Technology in the program of Mechanical and Robotic Engineering. And I am very happy when I knew that my name have been in the list of the top 2% scientists of the world. So I got the ranking in the field of the material, and it means that I feel that it's very good that I can consider that this ranking is one kind of my success for my career, for my working hard, for my pushing a lot of the efforts. And all of the time of doing the research, I took around 15 years to get a success like this. I started to do the research in 2007 until now. The topic that I'm looking for in the time of starting is the laminated composite material. The people know that the laminated composite material is the lightweight structure, very good in the strength ratio, and then they will be used in many of engineering applications, such as racing car, ship, ocean engineering, aircraft, aerospace engineering. And then in around 2010, the topic of laminated composite is quite old, and it's time to move to more advanced topic, and I decided to go to functionally graded material. This is very good material in high temperature environments because FGM, function graded material we call FGM. FGM is the mixing between the ceramic and metal, and people know that the ceramic is very good in the material for high temperature environment because they have a less damage from temperature loading. When they make together with the high toughness of the metal, we will have a good and perfect material. But in fact, in the real thing, in the manufacturing, when we make FGM, we got a lot of problem of the porosity inside the FGM or defect, and we cannot get rid of all of the defect like this. I am the first person who predict the defect in the FGM. I create the mathematical model to predict the behavior of FGM carrying the porosity, and then the topic is very popular, and I have a lot of citation of the paper of the porosity in FGM. Then next, in around 2015, the new topic that I looking for is the laminate. Is the new composite material which is mixing between the nanoparticle, and we include the carbonyl or graphene into the composite. Then we found that the strength of the composite, the new composite, it improved a lot. We have a very high toughness. We have a good property of electrical. We have a good property of chemical when we make the composite with the nanoparticle. And this is now we try to enhance the performance of the research to achieve many complex modeling to predict the new behavior of the new composite material like nano composite material. And now we extend to the nonlinear analysis. We do a lot of bending analysis, bucking analysis, vibration analysis of the new structure. This is my story of material that I have done, and this is my expertise in the material field. And so I would like to say to the new researcher that when you have very good paper and you need to submit to the journal, try to find the long story journal that's like the journal that have a long story that they can have a first issue in the 1980, 1990 or something. Long story journal have very good editor and they very strict. They try to check the originality and novelty, innovative, and the scope should match well with the theme of your paper. Otherwise, you will get rejection. And then another thing that is very important to do before you go to public is to write very good letter to editor, because sometimes you just copy and paste the abstract to the editor, and the editor read maybe look a little bit boring. You try to attract the attention from the editor, like maybe sometimes a little bit informal, and then you may say that your paper contains a lot of new things, the new model, and you have a first establishment for the model, you tell everything in the letter to editor, and maybe you can conclude that if you get a publication, the paper will have a great attention from the researcher around the world. Maybe sometimes the editor want to reject your paper. Maybe they think rethinking again. Yeah, this is something like that. Some people forget. They think the letter of editor maybe not important, but I think the letter to editor is very important. So to talk about after COVID-19, that people suffer from COVID-19 a lot recently, and everyone have a lot of effect from COVID-19. They cannot go to the lab, they cannot go to the research center, they cannot go to talk with the experts because of COVID-19. And after COVID-19, the topic is, for me, materials engineering maybe not much have a good effect from the COVID-19 because we still do sometimes modeling analysis. Sometimes we go to some experiment by myself. I have no contact much with the people. But the topic that will be popular after COVID-19 is like medicine, robotic, automation, because people cannot go to gathering together. They use the robots, additive manufacturing to work for a human. And I think the kind of topic will be good in the next future after COVID-19. And then I hope that the young researchers should have a good future of the research. I hope that everyone can do, and if you reading a lot and you put a lot of effort, you can get achievement like me. So I would like to say that the good reader is the good writer. A young researcher should read a lot as much as you can. And thank you very much for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to Walailak University Pride. 3 top 2% world scientists awarded by Stanford University. And if you are interested in their work and would like to connect with these people, please kindly contact the Center for International Affairs at cia.wu.ac.th. Before we close this morning opening ceremony, we would like to thank Associate Professor Dr. Pasit Law Thirapong, Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation, for preparing an opening video clip for 2022 Research Convention. Our appreciation also goes to all the honorable audience for our participation in this opening ceremony. And also we pass our appreciation of the kind support from our great Taiwanese partner, Changhua Christian Hospital. Thanks to distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Peter Yuan from Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Associate Professor Dr. Harding, School of Science, Walailak University, and also we thank distinguished plenary speaker for the discussion, Professor Dr. Yusuf Christie from Massey University, New Zealand, Dr. Akrawit Kanchana Opat, Vice President of National Science Technology Development Agency, also Professor Dr. Edmund Lee from National University of Singapore, and also we thank our top 2% world scientists awarded by Stanford University, Associate Professor Dr. Manat Chaitan, Associate Professor Dr. Viranut Nisaphathorn, and Associate Professor Dr. Nathawit Wattanasakunpong. Please also kindly complete the satisfaction survey for 2022 Walailak Research Convention, which the link of which is put in the Zoom chat box, so that we can develop or improve ourselves for 2003 Walailak Research Convention. My name is Patnarin Supakon, Acting Director for the Center of International Affairs at Walailak University. It's my pleasure to be with you as an MC this morning. And at this end, may I leave you with a take-home message from General Director of World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus. He said, be safe from coronavirus infection, be smart and inform yourself about it. Be kind and support one another. This is very important. We have to support one another. We do hope that you visit the Institute of Research and Innovation website for 2022 Walailak Research Convention at wrc2022.org or org to shop for your conference, webinar, and seminar or workshop of your interest. May I now call this opening ceremony closed. At this moment, may I invite the President and all the executive members and on-site participants to join a group photo session in front of the conference backdrop outside this Huatapan Hall before going down to the ground floor for delicious lunch at the VIP diner. So let's give ourselves a round of applause for this successful opening ceremony. And may I inform you that for the photo session, we would like President, Vice President Vanna, Vice President Surin, Director and Deputy Director of the Institute of Research and Innovation to stand at all photo session, and then the first round will be other Vice President and President Assistant, and then the second set of the photo will be Directors and Deans, and the last set to take the photo with the President, Vice President Vanna, Vice President Surin, and Director, Deputy Director of the Institute of Research and Innovation will be heads of school research units. Let's go outside and do our photos. And after the photo session, please kindly go down to the ground floor to the VIP diner for lunch. Okay, thank you everyone for joining this opening ceremony and hope to see you again for 2023 Walailak Research Convention. Goodbye.